ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 2 of the series. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. The chamber fell silent, Kim's words slicing through the still air and reverberating off the cold stone walls like the toll of a death knell. A suffocating tension descended, thick and unrelenting, as flickering torchlight painted long, sinister shadows across the faces of the survivors. The scent of damp stone and old vital fluid lingered, a grim reminder of the trials they had endured. There were 17 of us. Kim began, his voice a low, menacing growl that carried the weight of their shared suffering. Now we're down to 6. His sharp, unforgiving gaze swept over the group, each survivor shrinking under the intensity of his scrutiny before locking onto Song. I'm sorry about your arm, Song, but an apology won't pay for the lives this dungeon has claimed. Park, split in two, deserved more than this. Kim paused, his right hand suddenly igniting in a swirl of flames that twisted and danced like living entities. The fire coalesced into a vortex, from which he drew forth a gleaming sword. Its blade shimmered ominously in the dim light, the edge razor-sharp and menacing, reflecting the flicker of the torches like a harbinger of doom. In one swift motion, Kim leveled the sword at Song's throat, the tip mere inches from his skin. Midoriya said the third commandment demands a sacrifice, he snarled, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. So I say we sacrifice you. Song Chiyul, you let us here. For all your sins, you must pay with your life. Izuku and Juhi froze in horror, their faces pale and stricken as the weight of Kim's words sank in. The atmosphere grew heavier, suffused with despair and disbelief, as though the dungeon itself was feeding on their turmoil. Mr. Kim, Izuku finally stammered, his voice trembling like a fragile thread about to snap. It wasn't his F. Shut up, Kim roared, his eyes blazing with a volatile mix of fear and fury. The veins in his neck bulged, and his grip on the hilt tightened, the blade trembling with his rage. He has to take responsibility, right? Song's expression remained composed, his solemn gaze meeting Kim's fiery eyes without flinching. The silence stretched, taut as a drawn bowstring, before Song finally spoke. His voice, calm and steady, broke through the oppressive tension. He's right, kid, Song said softly, addressing Izuku. There's no need to defend me. Turning back to Kim, he added, put your sword away. I'll go willingly. Izuku's mind churned with anger and frustration, his thoughts a storm of indignation. This isn't fair, he thought furiously. It's not Mr. Song's fault. We all voted to come here. Park and Kim were the first to say yes, but we all chose this path. How can Kim blame him alone? Gritting his teeth, Izuku tried to push himself upright, his battered body protesting every move. Pain flared in his side, and his vision blurred momentarily, but he refused to falter. His eyes remained fixed on Song, who had already begun walking toward the altar. Each step was deliberate, his demeanor resolute, as though he had already made peace with his fate. Izuku, your wounds, Juhi's voice faltered as she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, her concern evident. Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying her fear, but her words couldn't hold him back. Pain coursed through Izuku's body, his missing right leg a constant reminder of the horrors they'd endured. The phantom ache in his absent limb gnawed at him, but it was nothing compared to the anguish in his heart. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms, drawing vital fluid. He couldn't sit idly by. He couldn't let Song bear the burden of a mistake they had all made together. As Song approached the altar, the air grew heavier, charged with an unnatural energy that prickled at their skin like static before a storm. The ancient runes carved into the stone began to glow with an eerie, pulsating light, their rhythm like a heartbeat awakening from centuries of slumber. The altar itself seemed alive, humming with a malevolent force that resonated in their very bones. The survivors watched in silence, their breaths shallow and uneven. The oppressive weight of the dungeon pressed down on them, a cruel reminder that it demanded payment in vital fluid. Song paused, his shadow stretching long and distorted across the glowing altar. He cast one last glance back at the group, his eyes filled with a quiet resolve that spoke louder than words. When Song stepped into the altar's perimeter, a sudden whoosh echoed through the chamber. A vibrant red flame erupted at the edge of the ancient stone platform, its flickering light casting eerie, dancing shadows across the faces of the survivors. The group froze, their collective breath held as fear and anticipation gripped them. "What is it? What's happening?" Kim's voice cracked, his usual bravado replaced with alarm. Song spun around, his face clouded with uncertainty. "Midoriya," he called, his voice tight with tension. "You sure this is it?" Izuku shook his head, his brow furrowed in thought. "No," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "One flame? What does it mean? Is it asking for something other than a sacrifice?" His mind raced, piecing together the cryptic puzzle. He had been confident that the third commandment, "Thou shalt prove thy faith," would be fulfilled when someone stepped onto the altar as a sacrifice. Yet now doubt crept in. A flicker of hope ignited in Izuku's chest. If it's not about a sacrifice, he mused silently, then maybe this isn't bad news. Maybe Song can still be saved. His expression brightened slightly, though the weight of their peril remained heavy. But he trailed off. Izuku glanced at Juhi, kneeling beside him, her hands glowing faintly as she poured healing energy into his battered body. Sweat dotted her pale face, her exhaustion and worry evident. Around him, the strain of their ordeal was etched into every face. "Help me to the altar," Izuku croaked, his voice weak but resolute. Two companions rushed to his side, draping his arms over their shoulders to support him. "Izuku, your injuries," Juhi protested, her voice tinged with concern. "I'll manage, Juhi," he reassured her, though the pain flashing across his face betrayed his words. Slowly, painstakingly, they moved toward the altar. Each step sent fresh waves of agony through Izuku's body, but he pressed on, teeth gritted. As his feet touched the cold stone, 3 more flames ignited around the altar's edge. Izuku's eyes widened as a realization dawned. "The number of flames matches the people on the altar," he murmured. The flames pulsed in rhythm with his racing heart, their movement hypnotic yet purposeful. Scanning the altar, Izuku took in the scene. Himself, Song, and the 2 who had helped him. For people, for flames. The circular pattern was unmistakable. If I account for the gaps between the flames, Izuku thought, his analytical mind kicking into gear, 2 more would complete the circle. It seems everyone must step onto the altar for this to progress. He turned to Song, his voice low and urgent. "If we wait here, do you think other hunters will come to rescue us?" Song shook his head grimly. "Today's the 7th day since the gate appeared," he said, tension lacing his voice. "The creatures will act before help arrives. It's a D-rank gate, so the association hasn't prioritized it. That's how they operate. 7 days. The deadline for containing a gate. If they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic." Izuku's gaze shifted to the towering statue of the god, its arrogant expression seeming to mock their plight. The thought of such a being unleashed upon the world sent a shiver down his spine. With renewed determination, Izuku called out, "Juhi, Kim, join us on the altar." Juhi hesitated but stepped forward resolutely. Kim followed, his earlier bravado replaced by wary caution. As their feet touched the stone, 2 more flames flared to life, completing the circle of red fire. The air thickened, charged with an oppressive, otherworldly energy that made the hairs on their necks stand on end. Then, without warning, a new phenomenon began. Blue flames materialized at the altar's outer edge, forming a larger circle beyond the red one. These azure fires flickered and danced, their ethereal light casting ghostly hues across the survivors' faces. Izuku's mind raced as he counted. 34, 35, 36. He muttered. 36 blue flames, perfectly spaced. The numbers tugged at his thoughts, a puzzle just out of reach. The 6 red flames matched the number of people, Izuku reasoned. But what's the significance of 36 blue flames? Before he could delve further, a deafening clunk echoed through the chamber. The massive double doors at the entrance swung open, startling the group. "What's happening?" Kim shouted, his voice edged with panic. "The door's open," Song exclaimed, but the relief in his tone evaporated almost instantly. An oppressive sense of dread descended over the group, heavy and suffocating. This couldn't be the end. Something else was coming. It had to be. As if answering their unspoken fears, one of the blue flames flickered and vanished. At the same moment, a deep, resonant thudding echoed through the dungeon, a rhythmic pounding of heavy stone footsteps, deliberate and unrelenting. Song's eyes widened in sheer terror as the source of the noise came into view. "Oh no! Oh no!" he stammered, his voice cracking under the weight of his alarm. "What now?" Kim barked, spinning around to confront the looming threat. Song's trembling hand shot out, pointing toward the entrance. His next words froze the group in place. "The statue knights. They're moving. They're coming for the altar," he cried, his voice trembling as the once lifeless guardians marched forward with menacing intent. "What should we do?" someone exclaimed, their voice trembling with fear. "Why are they coming after us?" Another cried out, panic evident in their tone. Izuku's sharp eyes caught sight of Jui, her hands covering her face in terror. He called out to her, his voice firm but reassuring, "Don't close your eyes, Jui. Keep watching." Turning to the others, he quickly explained, "This is like a deadly game of red light, green light. They'll move as soon as we break eye contact. Don't take your eyes off the statues, no matter what." As if to punctuate his words, another blue flame flickered and vanished. The woman who had been supporting Izuku began to hyperventilate, her eyes wide with terror as she stared at the approaching stone knights. Her breathing became more erratic, her body trembling violently. Suddenly, with a piercing scream, she bolted from the altar, unable to withstand the pressure any longer. As she fled, one of the red flames extinguished, leaving only a wisp of smoke in its wake. "No!" Izuku cried out urgently, his hand reaching out futilely towards the fleeing woman. To everyone's astonishment, the woman dashed through the open doorway without meeting a gruesome fate. The group watched in disbelief as she disappeared from view, her frantic footsteps echoing in the distance. Kim's voice cut through the stunned silence. What the hell? Midoriya, what's going on?" "She made it out alive." His eyes darted between Izuku and the doorway, confusion evident on his face. Izuku, still supported by another man, couldn't see the doorway. His mind raced, piecing together the puzzle before them. "The blue flames are extinguishing as time passes," he muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But the red flames, they go out when someone leaves the altar, matching the number of people left." His eyes widened as realization struck. The first command was to worship. The second was to praise. The third, to prove our faith. He looked up at the others, his gaze intense. "This must be a trap. The open door is giving us false hope. They want us to prove our faith by resisting temptation and overcoming fear." As if on cue, the man supporting Izuku began to tremble violently. Without warning, he let go, causing Izuku to collapse onto the hard stone of the altar. The man bolted towards the open doors, another red flame extinguishing as he crossed the threshold. "The hell!" Kim exclaimed, his body tensing as if ready to follow. "Nobody else move," Izuku shouted, his voice strained as he pushed himself up, resting his back against the altar. "We can't have anyone else leave the altar." His eyes scanned the approaching statues, calculating their next move. "We can't keep all of the statues in our sight. If we lose any more people, we're as good as dead. What's going on, Midoriya? Give us something, an explanation, anything," Song demanded, his voice taut with anxiety. His wide eyes flickered nervously between the advancing statues and Izuku. Desperation etched deep into his face. Izuku inhaled sharply, grimacing as a jolt of pain shot through his battered body. Despite his exhaustion, his voice was steady and clear. We just need to keep our eyes on the statues and wait. The blue flames, they're like a countdown. Once they all go out, we should be able to escape this place alive. Kim's brow furrowed, skepticism clouding his expression. Midoriya, I want to believe you, but... He hesitated, swallowing hard. What if you're wrong? What if the door slams shut when the flames go out instead? How can you be so sure? Izuku's chest tightened. He wanted to offer reassurance, to prove he was right, but deep down, he knew he couldn't guarantee anything. The silence that followed felt suffocating, the weight of unspoken fears hanging heavy in the air. After a moment, Kim's tense features softened. Honestly, Kim began, his voice tinged with reluctant admiration. I never thought the weakest member of the party would keep us alive this long. He let out a weak chuckle, shaking his head. No offense, buddy, but I didn't think you'd contribute much at all. Kim's gaze swept over the altar, lingering on the small group of survivors huddled together. His tone grew somber. But after everything, after watching so many people get slaughtered here, the rest of us are still alive because of you. You cracked the riddle. You saved us. I owe you my life, and for that, I'm grateful. Mr. Kim, Izuku whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. But before he could say anything more, Kim's shoulders slumped. His entire demeanor shifted, a deep sorrow overtaking him. But Kim's voice broke, his anguish spilling forth. The metallic clang of his sword hitting the stone floor echoed through the chamber. I've got a family waiting for me out there, he choked out, tears streaming down his face. I can't die here. I just can't. Izuku's eyes widened in alarm as realization dawned. Mr. Kim, no, he cried, straining to push himself upright despite the pain racking his body. Don't. But Kim was already moving. He stepped toward the edge of the altar, his movements shaky but resolute. His voice was barely audible over the pounding of Izuku's heart. I'm sorry, but I'm done. His sobs racked his body as he turned to face Izuku one last time. Regret and fear painted his features. Sorry, buddy, he whispered before bolting toward the open door. No, Mr. Kim. Izuku's anguished scream reverberated through the chamber as another red flame extinguished in the brazier. He clenched his fists, his nails biting into his palms as he fought back tears of despair. The crushing weight of responsibility bore down on him, heavier than ever. He had to keep the others alive, had to guide them through this nightmare. But with each vanishing flame, hope slipped further and further from their grasp. Grateful, you say? Drop the theatrics. If you run now, just to save your own skin. You've doomed all of us to die. Izuku's thoughts raged like a storm, his frustration spilling over as tears streaked down his face. He clutched his head tightly with both hands, trying to steady his spiraling emotions. Not yet. We have to survive this. Somehow I always pull through. Every single time. The stone statues surrounding them crept closer, their encirclement tightening like a noose. Song's sharp eyes scanned the dire situation before he turned to Izuku and Juhi, his face etched with grim determination. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of resignation. Both of you, you should leave now, he said. Izuku's gaze snapped to the older man, his heart sinking at the words. Song continued, his tone steady yet tinged with guilt. Just as Kim said, I was the one who dragged us all into this. If someone has to stay behind, it's only right that it's me. But still, you don't deserve this. Izuku's voice cracked, his protest raw and desperate. Song shook his head, a faint, bittersweet smile forming on his lips. You two have a future ahead of you. You should be the ones to survive today. His words, though resolute, carried an undercurrent of sorrow, knowing the pain it would bring to the young hearts he sought to protect. Izuku's shoulders slumped, his fists trembling at his sides. He felt helpless, trapped between the crushing weight of reality and the fleeting hope of survival. Reluctantly, he nodded, his throat tightening as the seconds ticked away. There was no time left for arguments, no time to debate who should stay and who should go. Song turned to Juhi, his voice softening. Juhi, can you help Midoriya here for a bit? Why, yes, Juhi stammered, her voice shaky but resolute. She moved to prop Izuku up, but faltered almost immediately. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the floor. Panic flickered in her eyes as she struggled to rise, only to find her body betraying her. Tears welled up, spilling over as she choked out, "My legs. I can't move my legs." Both Izuku and Song froze, their expressions hardening as they took in Juhi's dire condition. Her pale blue lips and trembling body painted a grim picture. The overuse of her magic energy had pushed her beyond her physical limits, leaving her utterly drained. Izuku's voice broke through the heavy silence, firm despite the turmoil churning inside him. "You take Juhi and get out of this place." Song hesitated, glancing between the two younger fighters. He saw the determination in Izuku's eyes, but the weight of the decision bore heavily on him. Juhi, however, shook her head weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "No, I can't leave you here." Izuku forced a strained smile, his attempt at lightheartedness barely masking the gravity of the situation. "Hey, take my core. Buy some dinner with it." His words hung in the air, a fleeting attempt to ease the tension as the reality of their predicament loomed ever closer. "Don't worry. I'll come to find you if I get my chance to get out of here," Izuku said, his voice trembling under the weight of his emotions. His eyes lingered on Juhi as she clutched the essence stone he had handed her, her fingers trembling as though the object itself carried the burden of their despair. Her sobs grew louder, raw and unrestrained, her tears carving clean paths down her dirt-smeared cheeks. "How can you joke around, right?" In Juhi's voice faltered abruptly, her sentence cut off as a sharp, searing pain erupted at the back of her neck. Her knees buckled, and the world around her blurred into a haze. Struggling to form words, she managed to whisper his name, her voice barely audible. "Izuku." Her eyes, wide with fear and sorrow, locked onto his one last time before her body gave in to unconsciousness. Before she could collapse fully to the ground, Song moved with practiced precision, catching her limp form effortlessly. He hoisted her onto his shoulder, his movements deliberate but strained, as though the weight he carried extended far beyond her physical form. His face remained stoic, but a fleeting shadow of regret flickered in his dark eyes, betraying the turmoil beneath his calm exterior. "I said," his voice low, each word laced with urgency. Izuku stared at them, his throat tightening as he forced down the swirling emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He nodded stiffly, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Just take care of her," he said, his words fragile yet resolute. Without another word, Song turned and made his way toward the chamber's exit, Juhi's unconscious form swaying gently with each step. As they disappeared into the shadows, two more red flames hovering in the air extinguished, their light vanishing like the final breath of a dying fire. The chamber seemed to darken further, the oppressive atmosphere pressing down on Izuku like a suffocating weight. He remained rooted in place, his heart a chaotic storm of anguish and determination. A part of him screamed to call them back, to not let himself be left alone in this crumbling nightmare. But he knew better. This was the only way. His gaze fell to the cold, gleaming blade of Kim's discarded sword lying on the stone floor. Its sharp edge reflected the dim, flickering light, a grim reminder of the battle ahead. With a grunt of effort, Izuku bent down and wrapped his fingers around the hilt. The metal felt icy against his palm, sending a shiver up his arm. He tightened his grip, his knuckles whitening as he steadied himself. A bitter smile tugged at his lips, his thoughts dripping with irony. "I'm glad my death means they could live," he mused, his voice a silent echo in his mind. "Though if I had one regret, it's that I couldn't snag a better life insurance package." The sound of stone grinding against stone pulled him back to the moment. His eyes snapped to the advancing stone warriors, their featureless faces betraying no emotion, yet their unyielding march radiated lethal intent. The ground trembled slightly beneath their weight, each step reverberating like an ominous drumbeat. Izuku raised the sword, its point aimed directly at the nearest warrior. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, his heart pounding like a war drum. "I'm taking one of you down with me," he growled, his voice raw, his words crackling with defiance. His stance firmed, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring ready to snap. "So bring it on." As if answering his defiance, a stone lance hurtled toward him with deadly precision, its trajectory unerring. Izuku's instincts screamed at him, and with a desperate burst of speed fueled by sheer survival, he managed to redirect the weapon. The jagged tip screeched against the altar as it veered off course, sending a cascade of sparks into the air. But there was no time to dwell on his narrow escape. Momentum carried him forward, and with all his strength, he plunged his borrowed sword into the altar's left side, hoping to disrupt whatever dark force animated his enemies. The momentary triumph was fleeting. Above him, a shadow darkened his vision, a massive stone sword descending with brutal intent. Izuku twisted his body just in time, the blade slicing so close that it ruffled his hair. The effort left him gasping for air, his chest heaving as a sharp metallic tang filled his mouth. A violent cough racked his body, and crimson droplets splattered onto the cold, unforgiving stone beneath him. "I've always been the weakest," his inner voice whispered bitterly, the weight of old memories pressing down on him. Images of sneers, jeers, and ridicule clawed at his mind. Mocked, laughed at, but I never stopped. I always kept going. A sharp whistle cut through his thoughts, a stone axe, its deadly arc promising an end. Izuku raised his sword to block, but his battered and bruised body betrayed him. The axe cleaved into his arm with brutal force, and a searing pain erupted as vital fluid sprayed across the altar. He screamed, a raw, guttural sound ripped from the deepest recesses of his soul. "So this is it," he roared mentally, his voice breaking under the strain of fury and despair. "This is BS. Nonsense." A stone warrior seized him with inhuman strength, hurling him aside like a discarded toy. His body slammed into the unyielding altar, the impact robbing him of breath. He gasped, his lungs burning as despair coiled around his heart like a tightening serpent. "I fought so hard, clawed my way here, and for what?" His thoughts spiraled downward, the weight of hopelessness crushing him. Another lance struck, this time finding its mark with brutal precision. The jagged tip tore through his side, and he howled in agony, the sound echoing through the chamber. Vital fluid bubbled at his lips as he spat out his words, each syllable dripping with venom. "You think you're justified? Using me, discarding me like trash? You're no better than the trash you claim to fight. I have a family too. I wanted to make it home alive too." The stone warriors offered no response, no mercy. Another blow sent him sprawling, his body a canvas of cuts and bruises. He screamed again as the lance sliced through his shoulder, the pain blinding and unbearable. "I'm glad my death means they could live. How could you think that? You stupid hypocrite." His voice cracked, a mix of rage and sorrow spilling from his trembling lips. As he lay crumpled and bleeding on the cold stone floor, his vision blurred by tears and vital fluid, Izuku saw the final blow coming. The stone knight loomed above him, its massive sword raised high, its edge gleaming with cruel finality. A chilling wave of realization washed over him. This was it. The end. "No, I don't want to die," he thought, panic clawing at his chest. His mind scrambled for anything, any hope, any chance. "I just wish I had another Chan." The blade descended, and then darkness. In the suffocating void, a glowing prompt appeared, its radiant light slicing through the black like a beacon of salvation. "Notice, you have fulfilled all the requirements for completing the secret quest, Courage of the Weak. You are eligible to become a player. Do you accept? You're running out of time. Should you choose to decline, your heart will stop beating in 0.02 seconds. Do you accept?" Suspended between life and death, Izuku's lips twisted into a defiant smirk. His voice was barely a whisper, rasping through the agony. "Why not?" he said. "I accept. Notice. Congratulations. You are now a player." A blinding yellow light erupted, flooding the dungeon with an intensity that drove back the suffocating shadows. When Izuku's vision cleared, he saw the stone warriors frozen mid-attack, their monstrous forms now lifeless statues. The once oppressive chamber, filled with despair and death, now stood silent, bathed in the glow of his newfound resolve. A brilliant yellow light burst forth, illuminating the dungeon with an intensity that banished the suffocating shadows. As Izuku's vision adjusted, he saw the stone warriors frozen mid-attack, their monstrous forms reduced to lifeless statues. The once oppressive chamber, heavy with despair and death, now stood silent, its darkness replaced by the radiant glow of his newfound resolve. Izuku, Midoriya's eyes snapped open as he shot upright, his chest rising and falling with rapid, shallow breaths. His hand instinctively pressed against his chest, feeling the wild rhythm of his heartbeat beneath his palm. Alive? The thoughts surged through his mind, disbelief crashing over him like a tidal wave. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled his nose as he took in his surroundings. White walls, the steady beep of machines, and the sterile atmosphere of a hospital room enveloped him. As he adjusted to the scene, a nurse at the far end of the room noticed his movement. Her eyes widened in surprise before relief softened her expression. "The patient's awake. Notify his family and the doctor," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. Izuku's mind raced, fragments of memory flashing vividly before him. He recalled the gleaming sword descending toward his head, its blade catching the light with deadly intent. Even if it had somehow been missed, he had been surrounded by a horde of monstrous enemies. Creatures so powerful they had pushed even the elite rank as hunters to their breaking points. But I survived that? The question echoed in his mind, his brows knitting together in confusion. Could it all have been a dream? The notion seemed absurd, yet the memories were so visceral, so raw. He had to be sure. With trembling hands, Izuku pulled back the thin hospital blanket draped over him. He braced himself, holding his breath. If the nightmare had been real, his leg would still be gone, ripped away in that hellish dungeon. But if it had all been an illusion, his leg would be intact. Izuku gasped, his voice barely above a whisper as he stared at his uninjured leg. Relief and confusion warred within him. Was it really just a dream? Before Izuku could fully process his surroundings, the door to his room burst open. A doctor entered hurriedly, slightly out of breath, adjusting his glasses as he approached the bed. "I apologize if we startled you, Mr. Midoriya," he said in a composed tone, his voice steady despite his rushed entrance. Izuku, still disoriented, shook his head. "And no problem. Did I have any injuries when I was brought in?" he asked hesitantly, his thoughts racing. The doctor glanced at the medical chart, flipping through its pages with practiced efficiency. "No, none at all. Your condition is quite remarkable," he replied, though his expression shifted subtly, a shadow of seriousness crossing his face. He hesitated briefly before continuing, "Your sister is on her way. She'll be here soon." As the doctor spoke, a nurse stepped closer, leaning in to whisper something in his ear. Though her voice was low, Izuku's newly heightened senses caught fragments of their conversation. "Should we tell him?" "Puss. The nurse's tone carried an undertone of concern, her words laced with hesitation. The doctor nodded solemnly, his expression growing heavier. "We should," he agreed, quietly before turning his full attention back to Izuku. His gaze was steady but grave. "Mr. Midoriya, do you remember the date when you were brought in?" Izuku frowned, his mind struggling to piece together the timeline. "It was mid-June. A Friday, I think." "Why?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. The doctor took a deep breath, his tone now laden with sympathy. "I'm sorry to inform you, but you've been in a coma for 3 days." The revelation hit Izuku like a thunderclap. "What?" he exclaimed, his heart pounding as panic began to set in. "No, wait, the bills. The hospital fees. My sister." His voice rose, his mind spiraling into a torrent of worry about the financial burden his condition must have placed on his family. The doctor raised a calming hand, his voice reassuring yet firm. "Please, don't worry. The Hunter Association has taken care of everything. They've covered all expenses, as your actions were instrumental in ensuring the safe return of the other hunters." Relief washed over Izuku, but it was quickly replaced by a new wave of anxiety. As the doctor turned to leave, Izuku called out, "Wait, what about?" But the door had already closed, cutting him off mid-sentence. "Juhi and Mr. Song," he finished softly, his voice barely audible in the empty room. Leaning back against the pillows, Izuku stared at the ceiling, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. What had truly happened in that dungeon? How had he survived? And what had become of Juhi and San during the 3 days he had been unconscious? As questions swirled in his mind, he couldn't shake the sense that his life had been irrevocably altered, and that this was only the beginning of a journey far beyond anything he could comprehend. Izuku heard the creak of the door and thought, "That must be Izumi. I didn't expect her to arrive this quickly." However, when he turned, he saw 2 men stepping into the room. Both were dressed in sharp, tailored black suits. One of them, a striking young man with slick orange hair, saves for a single rebellious strand, and piercing purple eyes. The man beside him spoke first. "Unfortunately, we can't wait any longer." Izuku frowned. "Who are you?" The man with the orange hair stepped forward professionally. "I'm Wu Jinshul, manager of the Hunters Association surveillance team," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. He gestured to the man beside him, who looked to be in his mid to late 20s. This second man was lanky, with spiky purple hair and matching purple eyes. He carried a sturdy metal case in one hand. "And this is Kong Taeshik," Jinshul added. Jinshul handed Izuku a business card, the crisp lettering confirming his identity. Izuku studied it briefly before asking, "What does the surveillance team want with me?" Jinshul's expression remained professional as he replied, "We're here to provide information regarding the aftermath of the dungeon raid, the one that left you comatose." He nodded toward Kong, signaling him to prepare something. "Are Juhi and Mr. Song okay?" Izuku asked, his voice heavy with concern. His eyes darted between the 2 men seated near his hospital bed, searching their faces for reassurance. Jinshul's expression tightened, his professional demeanor faltering for a moment. "They're alive," he began, his tone measured and deliberate. "But the situation is far from ideal." Izuku's chest constricted at the words, but he gave a small nod, urging Jinshul to continue. "Song Chiyul lost an arm during the incident," Jinshul said, his voice steady yet tinged with sadness. "The injury is catastrophic and will almost certainly end his career as a hunter. As for Li Jui," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "She's physically recovered from the mana drain, but the psychological trauma has been profound. She's undergoing intensive psychiatric care to cope with what happened." Izuku's hands tightened around the thin hospital blanket, his knuckles turning white. The memory of Juhi's terrified screams and her panicked face in the dungeon replayed vividly in his mind. Jinshul's voice softened slightly as he continued. "Her condition is concerning. There's a significant risk her trauma could make her a danger to herself or any team she joins in the future. At this point, it's unclear if she'll ever return to hunting." The room fell into a heavy silence as Izuku absorbed the grim news. The weight of the lives shattered by the incident pressed down on him like a physical burden. Jinshul cleared his throat, his professional demeanor reasserting itself. "There's more you need to know, Midoriya. Out of your entire expedition, only 6 survivors were found, including you. Hunting has always been dangerous, but this incident, this was unprecedented." Izuku's eyes widened in disbelief. 6? Out of how many? 16, Kong supplied quietly from his post by the door. Jinshul nodded grimly. When the White Tiger Guild arrived after being alerted by the survivors, they discovered something unusual. His sharp gaze locked onto Izuku. "You're the only one found at the site, Midoriya. Collapsed but alive." Izuku frowned, confusion clouding his face. But that's unbelievable, isn't it? Jinchul finished for him, his expression unreadable. If there had been even the slightest inconsistency in the reports, or if the remains hadn't matched the scene, suspicion would have fallen on your group. Jinchul rose from his seat and moved to the window, where the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the room. His voice carried a weight that matched the gravity of his words. This is just speculation, but... He turned back to Izuku, his expression intense. We believe you might have experienced a second awakening. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Izuku's eyes widened, his mind racing to process the possibility. A second awakening? He echoed, more to himself than to the others. A hunter's power is determined at the moment of awakening, an unchanging measure of their strength from that point forward. However, Jinchul explained, on rare occasions, a phenomenon known as a second awakening occurs. It allows a hunter to break through their previous limits, potentially reaching a rank or even the legendary S rank. It's exceedingly rare, but not impossible. Izuku's gaze dropped to his hand, clenching it into a determined fist. The idea ignited a spark of hope within him. Could it happen to me? He thought, a small, confident smile forming on his lips. Open the briefcase, Jinchul ordered, gesturing toward Kong. Without hesitation, Kong unlocked the case, revealing a sleek device cradling a glowing purple essence stone. This is a manometer, Jinchul explained. Place your hand over it. Izuku exhaled sharply, steadying himself. All right, moment of truth, he murmured, placing his hand on the device. A faint tingle spread across his palm as the manometer's cool surface seemed to hum with latent energy. Jinchul's mind churned with possibilities as he watched intently. If those survivors truly encountered insta-kill-level magic beasts, no low-level hunter could have survived. The absence of any trace of those creatures suggests the involvement of an A rank, maybe even an S rank hunter. The only explanation is that Midoriya experienced a second awakening. The tension in the room was suffocating. Jinchul leaned closer, his eyes locked on the manometer's display. Beside him, Kong held his breath, his gaze fixed on the screen. Suddenly, the device flickered to life. Both men froze, their anticipation twisting into disbelief as the reading appeared. 10. Izuku leaned forward, his heart pounding. What does it say? He asked, his voice trembling with a mix of excitement and dread. If I've reawakened, what rank am I now? Jinchul hesitated, his professional demeanor cracking as he searched for the right words. Finally, he spoke, his tone calm but tinged with regret. My apologies, Hunter Midoriya. It seems we were mistaken. He exchanged a glance with Kong before continuing. I'm sorry to have troubled you with this. Without another word, Jinchul and Kong gathered their belongings, their movements deliberate and mechanical. The metallic snap of the briefcase closing echoed in the now stifling silence. They exited quietly, leaving Izuku alone with his thoughts. As their footsteps echoed down the sterile, brightly lit hallway, Kang's frustration boiled over. Even E ranks usually score above 70 on their evaluations, he muttered, his voice sharp with disbelief. He's barely stronger than a civilian. How is this possible? Jinchul's expression darkened, his brow furrowing as his thoughts whirled. The dungeon has completely vanished. No trace, no access, nothing, he said, his voice low and heavy with concern. So how did he survive? How did he escape? Something doesn't add up. Back in a hospital room, Izuku clicked his tongue in annoyance, leaning back against the bed with a heavy sigh. The crisp white sheets rustled beneath him as he shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. TCH. And here I was, getting my hopes up, he muttered, disappointment clouding his blue eyes. He stared at the ceiling, tracing the fluorescent light patterns, when a sudden thought struck him. His gaze shifted to the corner of the room, where a strange blue prompt hovered. Wait, he murmured. Why didn't I ask about this thing? Notification. You have unread messages. Izuku sat up, his muscles protesting after weeks of disuse. The prompt seemed to respond to his movement, floating closer as if demanding his attention. Maybe I'm the only one who can see this, he wondered, reaching out tentatively. His fingers met empty air, causing the panel to glitch and flicker slightly. Okay, so it's not a touch panel, he concluded, withdrawing his hand. The eerie blue glow illuminated his pale skin, a stark reminder of the otherworldly dungeon he'd barely escaped. A memory surfaced as he studied the floating prompt, the moment the sword-wielding statue had loomed over him, ready to strike. I've seen this before, Izuku realized, his heart racing as the recollection sent a chill through him. The strange blue prompt seemed to dance at the edge of his vision, a haunting reminder of the dungeon's otherworldly nature. Suddenly, the door burst open with a sharp click. Izuku, still lost in thought, barely registered the sound. A female voice, tinged with relief and confusion, broke through his reverie. I heard you're awake. Huh? The newcomer paused, her brow furrowing as she took in the scene before her. A comical sweat drop seemed to form on her forehead. What are you doing? Izuku's head snapped up, his eyes widening in recognition. Izumi? There, standing in the doorway, was a carbon copy of their mother. Izumi's long, shoulder-length green hair was tied up in a neat ponytail, swaying gently as she tilted her head in confusion. Her matching green eyes, so like his own, sparkled with a mix of concern and amusement. She wore a crisp blue button-up long-sleeve uniform, beneath which peeked a white undershirt. A red bow, slightly askew from a rush to the hospital, adorned her collar. Her skirt swished as she stepped into the room, a white backpack slung over one shoulder. What's with the weird arm wave? Izumi asked, raising an eyebrow as she plopped her backpack onto a nearby chair. The fabric made a soft thud against the plastic seat. She walked over to his bed, her footsteps echoing in the quiet room. Izuku's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, the color stark against his pale skin. Oh, just stretching? He let out a nervous laugh, his hand instinctively moving to scratch the back of his head. The gesture was so familiar, so quintessentially Izuku, that for a moment it was as if the past 3 days had never happened. Izumi wasn't buying it. She crossed her arms, the fabric of her uniform crinkling slightly, and gave him a look that was equal parts skepticism and fondness. Right? 3 days in a coma, and the first thing you do is interpretive dance? Hey, give me a break, Izuku protested, but he couldn't help the grin that spread across his face. It felt good to see a familiar face, to engage in their usual banter. The normalcy of it was a balm to his frayed nerves. How'd you get here so fast anyway? Izumi's eyes widened, her arms dropping to her sides. Fast. Izuku, I've been coming here every day after school. Her voice softened a hint of the worry she'd been carrying for months creeping in. I've all been so worried. Guilt churned in Izuku's gut, coiling tightly like a vice. I'm sorry, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper as his gaze dropped to his hands. They looked frielier than he remembered, the pale skin stretched thin from too little sunlight. The thought struck him like a blow. How could I have ever wanted to die when I have a younger twin sister who needs me? Don't be silly, Izumi said, her voice gentle. She perched on the edge of his bed, the mattress dipping slightly under her weight. Her hand found his, giving it a reassuring squeeze. I'm just glad you're finally awake. She paused, biting her lip, a habit she'd picked up from their mother. So, how are you feeling? Really? Izuku hesitated, his gaze flickering to the corner of the room where a glowing blue prompt hovered, glaringly out of place against the sterile white walls of the hospital. His stomach churned, a mix of anxiety and curiosity swirling within him. If I tell her there's a floating panel, she'll think I'm crazy, he thought, biting his lip. The soft beeping of medical equipment in the background seemed to emphasize the surreal nature of the situation. Question? Izuku murmured, his voice barely audible over the ambient hospital noises. Yeah? Izumi replied, raising an eyebrow as she leaned back in her chair, the plastic creaking slightly under her weight. You know how, in games, there's sometimes a notification that says you have unread messages? He asked, his tone cautious. His fingers absently picked at the thin hospital blanket covering his legs. Izumi tilted her head, clearly puzzled. Her green hair caught the fluorescent light, creating a soft halo effect. Games? We're talking about games now? Just humor me, Izuku pressed, his eyes darting between his sister and the mysterious blue panel. How do you usually read those notifications? She shrugged, her uniform rustling with the movement. You open a message box, obviously. Why are you asking about this? Open a message box. Izuku echoed under his breath, his eyes drifting back to the glowing panel. He focused intently, willing the notification to open as if it were a game interface. Suddenly, the blue glow intensified, and new text appeared. Notification. You've become a player. Daily quest. Strength training has arrived. Izuku's heart raced, a mix of excitement and trepidation flooding his system. I remembered this player's stuff being mentioned before. He thought, his mind racing back to the strange events in the dungeon. Izumi got up from her chair, her legs scraping against the linoleum floor. She grabbed her book bag, slinging it over her shoulder. Well, you seem fine enough, just a bit weird, she said with a small smile. I gotta go. See ya, bro. You too, sis, Izuku responded, watching his sister leave the room. The door closed with a soft click, leaving him alone with the mysterious notifications. He looked back at the panel and saw 3 more messages had appeared. 3x notification. This system is designed to assist the development of the player. Failure to comply with the system may result in a penalty. The rewards have been delivered. Izuku's brow furrowed as he read the new information. I don't have a clue what this is supposed to mean, he muttered, running a hand through his messy green hair. The weight of these cryptic messages settled on him, a mix of anticipation and unease churning in his gut. He glanced around the empty hospital room, half expecting to see some physical manifestation of the rewards mentioned. The room remained unchanged, save for the ethereal glow of the notification panel. Player? System? Penalties? Izuku murmured, his mind spiraling with questions. What on earth have I gotten myself into? As if answering his unspoken thoughts, the glowing panel flickered before displaying a new message. Daily quest, strength training goals. Objectives: 0 out of 100 push-ups, 0 tense km run, 0 out of 100 squats, 0 out of 100 curl-ups. Warning: failure to complete this quest may result in a penalty. Huh. You gotta be joking, right? Izuku muttered, his voice trembling with a mix of disbelief, frustration. His gaze flickered between the glowing panel hovering before him and his frail body sprawled on the hospital bed. I'm stuck here, barely able to move, and they expect me to do all this? Push-ups? Running? Squats? Curl-ups? I can't even sit up without feeling like I'm going to fall apart. He dragged a shaky hand through his unruly black hair, wincing as even that small effort sent a sharp protest through his muscles. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, their harsh glare casting jagged shadows across the sterile room. The steady beep of the heart monitor only seemed to mock him, a rhythmic reminder of his predicament. It's a daily quest, though, he muttered, his eyes darting back to the glowing panel. That means I have 24 hours, right? I'll deal with it later. The words felt hollow, even to him. Exhaustion pressed down on him like a leaden weight, his eyelids growing heavier with each passing second. The ominous blue glow of the panel blurred into an indistinct haze as sleep overtook him. Before long, Izuku was out cold, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The room sank into silence, broken only by the faint hum of medical equipment. Time slipped by unnoticed, the quest timer ticking steadily forward. Green shifted to yellow, a silent warning that went unheeded by the sleeping boy. As the clock neared midnight, the timer turned an angry red, flashing with urgency that fell on closed eyes. When the clock struck 12, a new message materialized on the glowing panel. Notification: you have failed to complete the daily quest. Loading penalty zone. The words lingered ominously before the very fabric of reality seemed to warp. The sterile confines of the hospital room dissolved, replaced by an endless expanse of golden sand and a cloudless, blazing sky. Izuku's eyes snapped open as the ground beneath him shuddered violently. What's happening? An earthquake? He gasped, his trembling hands sinking into the warm, shifting sand. The grains slipped through his fingers, so alien compared to the crisp hospital sheets he had fallen asleep on. Disoriented, he struggled to sit up, his hospital gown now dusted with a fine layer of sand. All around him, the vast desert stretched endlessly, dunes rolling like frozen waves under the oppressive sun. Where am I? Izuku muttered, shielding his eyes from the glaring light. A desert? No way. Was I dreaming this whole time? Or is this? He stopped, the realization dawning on him like the heat of the sun overhead. The penalty zone. The penalty zone is an expansive desert where endless dunes of sand extend to the horizon. The air is eerily still, with no trace of wind, sun, moon, or stars. Overhead, the sky looms like a vast pool of spilled black ink. Yet, despite the absence of any visible light source, your surroundings remain unervingly clear. A low, sinister hissing broke through the oppressive silence, sending an icy chill down Izuku's spine despite the desert's blistering heat. He spun around, his breath hitching as his gaze landed on a dune, larger than any other in sight. It pulsed ominously, as though a colossal force stirred beneath its surface, waiting to break free. Without warning, the dune erupted, sand exploding into the air in a blinding storm. Izuku instinctively threw his arms up, shielding his face as the fine grains stung his skin and filled his lungs. He coughed, staggering back, his heart pounding like a war drum. When he finally lowered his arms, the sight before him made his body freeze. Towering above him was a monstrous centipede, its segmented body glinting like polished armor under the harsh desert sun. Each of its countless legs was as thick as a car, ending in razor-sharp tips that pierced deep into the sand. Its grotesque head loomed high, crowned with enormous, chittering mandibles that dripped venom. The creature's sheer scale was mind-numbing. Its height rivaled a 5-story building. This can't be real, Izuku thought, his heart hammering so violently he could feel it in his throat. But what truly unnerved him wasn't just the creature's size. Suspended above the centipede's head, glowing in midair like a surreal video game display, were 5 ominous red words. The poison-fanged giant desert centipede, Izuku read aloud, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his pulse. He blinked rapidly and rubbed his eyes, but the words remained steadfast, floating in defiance of logic. What? Why is there a name floating above it? As though in answer to his bewilderment, a new message materialized directly in his field of vision. Penalty quest. Survive. Objectives. Survive until the timer runs out. Required time. 4 hours. Time remaining. 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Izuku's throat went dry, panic clawing at his chest. Sweat dripped down his temples, stinging his eyes as he stared at the countdown. The centipede's antennae twitched, its attention locking onto him. A series of rapid, clicking sounds erupted from the creature, the vibrations rattling Izuku's ribcage like a death knell. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, his voice shaking as his gaze darted between the relentless timer and the nightmare towering above him. The centipede's mandibles quivered, venom oozing from their jagged edges and sizzling upon contact with the scorched sand. "Survive. I can do this." Izuku's heart thudded like a war drum, each beat echoing in his ears as his feet sank into the treacherous sand. The desert seemed alive, pulling him down with every desperate step as if it craved his surrender. Sweat streamed down his face, stinging his eyes, mixing with the grit that clung to his skin like a second, suffocating layer. The dunes stretched endlessly, a golden wasteland shimmering under the merciless glare of the sun. No landmarks, no shade, just an infinite expanse of despair. Behind him, something ancient and malevolent closed in, its presence a weight pressing on his very soul. Screech. The sound tore through the air, a metallic scream, so piercing it felt like knives slicing through his brain. Izuku flinched, his instincts warring with his terror. Against his better judgment, he glanced over his shoulder. His breath caught. No, 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 no. It was worse than he imagined. The centipede loomed, its monstrous form undulating with an unnatural elegance. Its segmented body glowed like molten metal, each joint reflecting the sun in blinding flashes. Hundreds of legs moved in flawless unison, a nightmare of precision and speed. Its mandibles clicked, dripping with a yellow ichor that hissed and bubbled as it burned the sand black where it fell. The air seemed to grow heavier, fouler, with every step it took. Izuku snapped his head forward, panic surging through him. His eyes darted frantically over the dunes. A rock, a crevice, a shadow, anything. But there was nothing. Just endless sand and the promise of death. "Think, Izuku," he gasped, his voice barely audible over his ragged breaths. "There has to be something." A sharp, searing pain stabbed into his side, stealing his breath. His stride faltered, his rhythm broken. His right foot plunged into a soft patch of sand, and he stumbled forward, arms flailing. Behind him, the air shifted a cold, predatory warning. No, the centipede struck. A razor-sharp claw slashed across his back, not deep enough to kill, but enough to tear flesh. Warm, vital fluid soaked his shredded shirt, the coppery scent mixing with the acrid tang of fear. The pain came a heartbeat later, white-hot and electric, almost blinding in its intensity. Izuku choked back a scream, his body moving on sheer instinct. "Keep moving, keep moving," he whispered, his voice trembling but resolute. He clawed his way up the next dune, his fingers digging into the loose, shifting sand. Each grain felt like fire against the fresh wound on his back, grinding into the raw flesh with every movement. Screech. The centipede's cry was closer now, too close. The sound reverberated through the dunes, a promise of inevitable doom. Desperation clawed at Izuku's chest as he reached the crest of the dune. There was no time to think, no time to plan. He hurled himself forward, letting gravity take him. "Come on," he shouted, his voice cracking. He slid down the slope, sand pouring into his clothes, his ears, and his mouth. As he gained speed, the world became a blur of gold and grit. Behind him, the centipede crested the dune, its massive body silhouetted against the blazing sky. For a moment, it seemed to hang there, a grotesque monument to terror, before it surged after him, its weight sending an avalanche of sand tumbling in its wake. Izuku hit the base of the dune hard, the impact jarring his already battered body. He scrambled to his feet, his lungs screaming for air, his back slick with vital fluid. The centipede was relentless, closing the distance with terrifying speed. "I won't die again," he growled through clenched teeth, his voice raw with defiance. "I can't." As if mocking his determination, the desert shifted beneath him. The sand rippled and churned, alive with malice, threatening to swallow him whole. The centipede screeched once more, its cry a harbinger of the horrors yet to come. Notification. Penalty quest. Survive. Objectives. Survive until the timer runs out. Required time. 4 hours. Time remaining. 7 seconds. Izuku stared at the notification panel floating before him, its blue light casting an eerie glow across his sand-caked face. His cracked lips parted as he read the words again. "Okay. 7 seconds left," he whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. Just 7 more seconds, and this nightmare would end. Click, click, click. The sound cut through the desert air like a knife, deliberate and methodical. Izuku's blood turned to ice in his veins as he slowly turned around. There it was, the centipede, now eerily motionless except for its mandibles that clicked together with mechanical precision. Its segmented copper body glistened with an oily sheen under the harsh sun, casting a monstrous shadow across the sand. Dozens of milky, pupilless eyes fixed on him with predatory intelligence, tracking his every shallow breath. "Are you kidding me?" Izuku muttered, heart hammering so violently he could feel in his throat. After hours of relentless pursuit, the creature had chosen these final moments to toy with him, to savor his fear. 5, 4. The countdown pulsed in his vision, each number seeming to take an eternity to change. Sweat dripped from his chin, cutting clean lines through the grime on his face. Panic surged through him, primal and overwhelming. "Am I really going to die?" The words escaped as a ragged shout, torn from somewhere deep within his chest. 3, 2. The centipede's body coiled suddenly, its front segments rising high above the sand. Its mandibles spread wide, revealing rows of needle-like teeth arranged in concentric circles, dripping with the same black ichor that had scorched the desert floor. At that moment, Izuku saw his reflection fragmented across dozens of gleaming eyes, a small, broken figure alone in an indifferent hell. The creature lunged forward, its grotesque form closing the distance in a blur of chitin and malice. The air displaced by its massive body created a whistling sound, the last thing Izuku would hear. His muscles locked, body betraying him when he needed it most. Izuku froze, paralyzed by a fear so pure it transcended rational thought. He shut his eyes tightly, bracing for the agony of being torn apart. 1. Heat and fetid breath washed over him. He could feel the creature's presence, could sense the imminent tearing of flesh. Notification: you've completed the penalty quest. A sudden burst of light engulfed him, blinding in pure white, starkly contrasting with the endless hours spent under the brutal desert sun. The terrifying presence of the centipede disappeared as though it had never existed, taking with it the suffocating heat and the gritty sensation of sand clinging to his skin. When Izuku finally summoned the courage to open his eyes, he returned to his hospital room. The sterile white walls and the sharp tang of antiseptic were jarringly ordinary compared to the nightmare he had just escaped. The steady beeping of monitors echoed beside him, tracking a heartbeat that was anything but steady. His chest rose and fell heavily as he struggled to catch his breath, the cool air-conditioned breeze brushing against the damp fabric of his sweat-soaked hospital gown. A soft chime interrupted his disoriented thoughts. Notification: your penalty quest rewards have arrived. Check your rewards now. Yes/no. Izuku's gaze flicked up to the glowing panel. The word barely left his lips before his vision blurred, and he collapsed into unconsciousness. Izuku's narration: it has been 4 days since I woke up, and during this time, I've discovered several important things. First, the panels I see in front of me are not illusions. They are real and interactive. Second, completing the daily quest presents me with 3 reward options: rejuvenation, bonus stats +3, and a random box. I usually choose rejuvenation because the daily quests leave me physically drained. However, valuable too. Choosing bonus stats allows me to increase my strength, agility, or other attributes, while the random box contains unpredictable items that could be useful. I can allocate the stat points I earn through the status screen into specific areas I want to improve, such as strength, speed, or intelligence. The more points I invest, the more powerful I become. This system also includes features like stat points, unique skills, an item inventory, and item storage. It feels as though I've been thrust into a real-life video game, and I'm certain that as I continue to level up and unlock new abilities, I'll become even stronger. But I can't get the unsettling feeling that there are some strange forces to the work here. Player status: name: Izuku Midoriya. Level 1. Class: none. Title: none. Fatigue: 0. HP: 100. MP: 0. Strength: 19. Dexterity: 10. Perception: 10. Vitality: 10. Intelligence: 35. Scene change: Hapjeong Subway Station. Izuku stood at the entrance of Hapjeong Subway Station, shoulders hunched against the evening chill. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across his face as commuters brushed past him, each locked in their world of mundane concerns. He glanced around furtively before slipping his hand into his pocket. With a thought, he summoned the green key into his palm. Its surface gleamed with an otherworldly luster that seemed out of place among the concrete and steel of the station. Examining it closely, Izuku traced his finger along its unusually ornate teeth. "It's time to figure out what this thing does," he murmured to himself. "Those random boxes appear every time I complete a daily quest. Usually they drop useless things like bandages and pins, but..." He turned the key over, watching how it caught the light. "I get a feeling this one's different." As if responding to his scrutiny, a translucent panel materialized before his eyes. Item: Dungeon Key. Rarity: E. Category: Key. A key to an instant dungeon. Use at Exit 3 of Hapjeong subway station. Izuku's breath hitched. A key to an instant dungeon. Huh? The words felt strange, as if they didn't quite belong to him, both alien and oddly familiar. His gaze flicked toward the sign for Exit 3, his pulse quickening. Quests, stats, rewards. Is my life turning into some sort of game? He murmured, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Could this be a sign of a second awakening? Or maybe just a step toward it? The questions swirled in his mind, feeding his unease. His grip on the key tightened, its sharp edges digging into his palm. The discomfort was grounding, a tangible reminder that this was real. If that's the case, it's worth the risk. He inhaled deeply and began moving toward Exit 3, weaving through the bustling evening crowd. The unknown that lay ahead tugged at him, quickening his pace despite the apprehension curling in his stomach. Imagine the world's weakest hunter getting reawakened. A bitter smile tugged at his lips. Yeah, I'm sure everyone would laugh at that. When he arrived at Exit 3, it looked like any other nondescript corridor in the station. Nothing about it stood out, and no one else seemed to notice anything unusual. Izuku hesitated, memories of his last encounter with the supernatural flashing vividly in his mind. If things get as bad as last time, I'm out, he muttered to himself. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's running away. Scanning his surroundings to ensure no one was watching, Izuku slowly extended his arm. The key hovered in what seemed like empty air until he felt resistance. His breath caught again. An invisible keyhole had been waiting for him all along. He turned the key. The faint click was barely audible, but the reaction was immediate. A thin seam of golden light split the air, widening into a door-sized portal. The light swirled and condensed into a shimmering blue gateway, pulsating with an energy that seemed to hum in tune with his very heartbeat. It appeared right in the station's entryway, impossible yet undeniable. Izuku stared, transfixed, the key now warm in his hand. He stood at the edge of something incomprehensible, a threshold to a world he couldn't yet fathom. He stepped through the threshold and immediately felt a subtle shift in the air, heavier, charged with an energy he couldn't quite name. As soon as both feet crossed into this new space, a notification materialized before him, its blue glow casting eerie shadows across his face. Notification: you've entered an instant dungeon. The soft hum of the subway station behind him suddenly changed pitch. Izuku spun around, just in time, to see the shimmering gateway beginning to contract, its edges folding inward like a closing iris. No, wait. He lunged toward the entrance, fingers outstretched, but the portal sealed itself with a quiet hiss, leaving only solid air where the exit had been moments before. His palm met invisible resistance. Not quite a wall, but an impenetrable boundary nonetheless. What the? Did that just seal the entrance? Izuku pressed both hands against the invisible barrier, panic rising in his throat. His eyes widened as he noticed a businesswoman walking directly toward him. No, through him, passing through the space where Izuku stood as if he were a ghost, and exiting through what appeared to be the normal subway exit from the female's perspective. The realization hit him like a bucket of ice water. I must be in an entirely different dimension. He swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. My guess is this is like a red gate, although I've never seen one myself. This isn't like the other dungeons hunters talk about. Izuku scratched his head on the left side in frustration, his fingers digging into his scalp. The familiar gesture did nothing to calm his mounting anxiety. The subway station around him appeared identical to the real one, yet subtly wrong. The lights a shade too blue, the shadows a touch too deep, the air carrying a metallic tang that hadn't been there before. "Oh no," he muttered, pacing in a tight circle. "I was planning to haul if things went wrong. But now I can't even get away with the entry sealed." Almost in response to his frustration, another notification panel materialized before him, its message unambiguous. Notification: you cannot leave this dungeon unless you defeat the boss or use the teleportation stone. Izuku read the message twice, then a third time, hoping the words might somehow rearrange themselves into something less terrifying. They didn't. "So, I'm basically stuck here unless I clear the dungeon," he whispered, his voice echoing strangely, and faced the subway tunnel that stretched before him. What had seemed like a normal passageway in the real world now extended into darkness far beyond what should have been possible, the tiles giving way to rough stone, the fluorescent lights fading into an oppressive gloom that swallowed everything beyond a certain point. A sudden chill ran down his spine as he stared into that endless abyss stretching into nothingness. His hands shook slightly as he balled them into fists at his sides. "I've got to do this all by myself, without a party." The words came out higher pitched than he'd intended, broadcasting his fear to the empty station. He bit his lip, trying to regain composure. Some reawakening this is turning out to be. Izuku's escape route was blocked, and he had no means of contacting the outside world. The only option left was to press forward. Carefully, he descended the staircase, his steps deliberate as he tried to detect any lurking monsters. The flickering lights above buzzed intermittently, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance across the walls like restless spirits. Each flicker plunged sections of the stairwell into momentary darkness, making Izuku's heart skip with every sudden shift. What should I do? Can I even manage this? Izuku wondered, doubt creeping into his thoughts. His hand instinctively reached for his phone, but the screen showed no signal. He was truly alone down here. Upon reaching the bottom of the stairs, he sensed no immediate presence nearby. The underground mall stretched before him, an eerie ghost town of abandoned shops and scattered debris. He cautiously passed the restrooms with their dripping faucets and the underground shops with shattered display windows, the atmosphere growing heavier with every step. For someone like Izuku, who had frequented dungeons before, the smell in the air was unsettlingly familiar, a mixture of decay, stagnant water, and something primal. And what's that foul stench? Could it be a beast-type monster? He murmured to himself, his nerves on edge. He pressed his sleeve against his nose, trying to filter the putrid air that grew stronger with each step forward. As Izuku walked past a dim hallway on his right, he noticed the temperature suddenly drop. His breath formed small clouds in front of his face, and his skin prickled with goosebumps. Then, a pair of glowing red eyes pierced through the darkness and locked onto him. Unblinking, hungry, predatory. In an instant, a monstrous figure lunged at him, its metallic jaw snapping open with a hydraulic hiss, ready to tear into him. The sound of claws scraping against concrete echoed through the empty mall. "A wolf?" he exclaimed, his eyes widening as he took in the creature before him, his body reacting before his mind could fully process the danger. Reacting with instincts honed from previous dungeon crawls, Izuku threw himself sideways, rolling across the floor as the beast's jaws snapped shut where his torso had been just moments ago. The impact of the monster's landing cracked the tile floor, sending fragments skittering across the ground. The beast was unlike anything he'd encountered before. Its fur was a deep, menacing red that seemed to absorb the scant light around it rather than reflect it. Its jaw was reinforced with gleaming metal fixed into a permanent snarl, with serrated teeth that could likely shred through steel. The crimson glow of its eyes burned with predatory intent, tracking Izuku's every movement with unnatural precision. Its muscles rippled beneath its hide as it stalked forward, and its sheer size rivaled that of an SUV. Above the creature, a title shimmered faintly in the air like heat distortion, marking its identity. Iron-jawed Leakin. Izuku tightened his stance, his feet finding firm positions on the floor as his hands raised defensively. The Leakin's breath came out in steaming clouds as it growled, the sound vibrating through Izuku's chest, a clear warning of the battle ahead. I can barely handle a couple of goblins. How am I supposed to stand a chance against that thing? Izuku's heart pounded in his chest, each beat hammering against his ribcage like a desperate prisoner. Cold sweat trickled down his face, leaving glistening trails along his pale skin as panic began to settle in his bones. Then, a chilling realization struck him. Something was wrong with his body. His muscles tensed, but refused to respond to his commands. "My legs, they won't move," he muttered, his voice trembling like autumn leaves in a harsh wind. He tried again, straining with all his might, but his limbs remained stubbornly frozen in place. Why? Am I scared? Is this fear paralyzing me? Izuku's mind raced frantically. I didn't think I was still this shaken from that experience. Dark memories of the double dungeon flashed before his eyes, each one a stark reminder of his mortality. His thoughts spiraled as the iron-jawed Leakin lowered its massive head, muscles bunching beneath its crimson coat. With a guttural growl that vibrated through the empty maw, the beast charged at him with ferocious speed, each powerful stride closing the distance between predator and prey. "Eff it," Izuku cursed under his breath, adrenaline finally breaking through the paralysis. He forced his body to react, commanding his legs to move despite their reluctance. At the last second, he managed to dodge to the right, the wolf's metal jaws snapping shut with a hydraulic hiss mere inches from his face. The rush of displaced air brushed against his cheek, carrying the monster's rancid breath. "I can't afford to get hurt here," he reminded himself, his mind racing as he stumbled back to his feet. "There's no one around to heal me this time, no backup, no safety net." His eyes darted around the desolate mall, confirming what he already knew. He was entirely alone in this fight. The Leakin skidded to a halt, claws scratching against the tile floor as it whirled around. Its eyes locked onto Izuku once more, burning with predatory intelligence. It lunged again, teeth bared and ready to tear through flesh and bone. Something shifted in Izuku's consciousness. Not thought, but pure instinct. His body moved on its own, throwing itself into a one-handed handstand flip that he'd never attempted before. The move was clumsy and unrefined, sending him crashing into the wall of a nearby storefront, leaving him momentarily upside down, staring directly into the glowing red eyes of his predator. "What the?" he thought, bewildered by his movement. The world seemed to slow down around him, giving him a moment of clarity despite his precarious position. Without hesitation, he pushed off the wall with surprising strength, propelling himself back into the air in a flip that would have made gymnasts envious. To his astonishment, it felt as though gravity itself had loosened its grip on him, allowing him to hang in the air for a heartbeat longer than should have been possible. "My body, it feels so light, like I'm floating," Izuku realized, his thoughts shifting from fear to curiosity as he hovered momentarily, defying the limits of what he believed possible. Below him, the wolf tilted its massive head upward, its mechanical jaw slightly ajar in what almost looked like confusion. Izuku landed back on the ground with surprising grace, his feet barely making a sound against the cracked tiles. The moment of reprieve was brief. The Leakin immediately recovered and dashed at him again, its metallic maw opening wide, ready to clamp down on his torso. Time seemed to slow again. At that moment, something broke free within Izuku, a dam of determination crashing through the walls of fear. "I almost died already," he thought, a fire igniting in his chest. "I won't succumb to my fear anymore." His internal voice rose to a mental shout, fueled by anger and the primal instinct to survive. "I can't die so meaninglessly here." As if responding to his resolve, a whitish-yellow aura suddenly materialized around his clenched fist. The energy crackled and hummed with power, illuminating the dim mall corridor with its glow. Without thinking, Izuku pivoted on his heel, channeling all his newfound strength into an uppercut that connected squarely with the Lycan's jaw. The impact produced a sound like a thunderclap in the enclosed space. The massive beast was sent flying backward, its body spinning through the air before smashing through the concrete wall of a clothing store in an explosion of dust and debris. Izuku stood frozen, his arms still extended from the punch, the aura around his fist slowly fading away. He stared at his hand in disbelief, turning it over as if seeing it for the first time. "How the hell did I do that?" he whispered, flexing his fingers experimentally. They felt normal. No pain, no strain, as if he hadn't just punched with enough force to send a creature 4 times his weight through solid concrete. Is it because I invested my stat points in my strength attribute? But a low growl interrupted his thoughts. Through the settling dust, Izuku could see the silhouette of the iron-jawed Lycan walking out of the rubble, shaking debris from its crimson coat. Its metal jaw was dented from the impact, but still functional. Its eyes burned with renewed fury as it fixed its gaze on Izuku once more. "That thing is still stronger than me," Izuku thought grimly, settling back into a defensive stance. His momentary victory hadn't even fazed the creature. If anything, he'd only managed to make it angrier. The Lycan lunged again, its hulking form tearing through the air with terrifying speed. Izuku braced himself, countering the attack with a flurry of frantic punches. Each strike connected squarely with the beast's thick hide, but it felt like pounding against solid stone, unyielding and impervious. This isn't working, he thought bitterly, a sharp pain already flaring in his knuckles. Bare fists can't cut it against these monsters. Even a basic one like this is still stronger than me. He dodged to the side just in time, narrowly avoiding the creature's claws. The Lycan's momentum sent it crashing into a nearby wall with a deafening impact. Concrete exploded into fragments, dust and debris raining down as the beast pulled itself free. Its crimson fur bristled as it shook off the rubble, and Izuku's sharp eyes caught a glint of metal between its jaws, shards of rebar from the wall, now tangled in its metallic teeth. The already lethal bite had become even deadlier. "What now?" Izuku muttered, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he darted backward, sneakers squealing against the slick tile floor. His mind raced, but no solution came to him. The Lycan recovered quickly, its glowing red eyes locking onto him with renewed fury. It pounced with unnerving precision, and this time, Izuku wasn't fast enough. Its jaws clamped down on his leg, the jagged metal teeth slicing through denim and flesh with horrifying ease. Agony shot up his limb like wildfire as the beast tore away, leaving behind a deep, gory wound. "Arg!" Izuku screamed, stumbling back against a shattered storefront. Vital fluid poured freely from the gash, staining his pant leg a vivid crimson. His ankle throbbed with searing pain, threatening to buckle beneath him. No healer. No backup. He muttered through gritted teeth, pressing his trembling hand against the wound in a desperate attempt to slow the bleeding. "No gear to help me. Do I even have anything that can take this thing down?" The Lycan began to circle him. Its movements were predatory and deliberate, savoring its advantage. Its maw dripped with his vital fluid, and the eerie glow of its red eyes seemed to intensify, as though it could sense his waning strength and resolve. But then, like a spark igniting in the void, an idea struck him, a last, desperate gamble. "Open inventory," Izuku shouted, his voice echoing through the desolate, wrecked mall. The air in front of him shimmered and warped, solidifying into a glowing blue panel. He had almost forgotten about this ability, a strange, game-like feature that always felt natural in dungeons but oddly surreal in the real world. Without hesitation, he thrust his hand into the panel. The sensation was unlike anything else, like plunging into cool, weightless water. Sparks of blue energy crackled around his wrist as his fingers closed around something solid within the interface. Finally, he muttered, a grim smile tugging at his lips as he felt the familiar heft of the object in his grip. Although, why is this in my inventory? The Lycan, sensing the shift in its prey, snarled and charged, its massive jaws wide open for the kill. Izuku yanked harder, pulling the object free from the glowing panel. A leather-wrapped handle emerged first, followed swiftly by the gleaming edge of a blade. Time seemed to slow as the beast closed in, its claws outstretched and its maw ready to snap shut. Acting purely on instinct, Izuku swung the weapon upward in a powerful vertical arc, aiming directly at the oncoming threat. The blade caught the dim, flickering light of the maul as it fully materialized, a polished, deadly sword. It cut through the air with a sharp, menacing whistle. Shunk! The enchanted blade met the Leakin with brutal finality. It cleaved through the creature's skull. With ease, continuing downward to split its massive body clean in two. For an instant, the halves of the beast seemed suspended in midair, as if resisting the inevitability of their demise. Then gravity took over, and the mutilated remains collapsed to the floor in a spreading pool of dark, viscous vital fluid. Notification: you have defeated Iron-Jawed Leakin. You have leveled up. Izuku stood frozen, the sword still extended from the follow-through of his swing. Its edge dripped with the Leakin's fluids, gleaming faintly under the flickering maul lights. His chest rose and fell with labored breaths as the realization of what had just happened began to sink in. This is Mr. Kim's sword from the double dungeon, he murmured, his eyes widening as he stared at the weapon in stunned disbelief. The blade radiated a sharper, more menacing aura than he remembered. How did this end up in my inventory? The metallic scrape of claws against concrete reverberated through the desolate mall, a haunting sound that sent a chill racing down Izuku's spine. He turned cautiously, his sword still slick with the vital fluid of the first Leakin, to confront two more of the iron-jawed beasts emerging from the shadows. Their glowing red eyes radiated a predatory intelligence, and their rippling muscles shifted beneath crimson fur as they advanced with calculated precision. This time, however, the fear that had paralyzed Izuku earlier was replaced by an eerie sense of calm. He tightened his grip on the sword, its familiar weight grounding him amidst the chaos. As long as I have a weapon, fear has no place, Izuku muttered, his voice steady with newfound resolve as he raised the blade defensively. But his confidence wavered when he attempted to adjust his stance. The sword's tip had somehow lodged itself between the floor tiles, wedged firmly into the concrete. Fit! It stuck! Izuku growled, yanking at the hilt with all his strength. His injured leg throbbed in protest, forcing him to fight for balance. The Lycans, sensing his vulnerability, exchanged what appeared to be knowing glances before launching themselves in unison. Their mechanical jaws gaped wide, revealing rows of gleaming metal teeth designed for destruction. Come on, come on! Izuku yelled, his muscles straining as he pulled at the embedded sword. The first Leakin closed the distance rapidly, its hot breath visible in the frigid air of the abandoned mall. Finally, with a sound like shattering glass, the sword broke free. Izuku barely had time to react, his movements driven purely by instinct. The enchanted blade whistled through the air, striking the first Leakin mid-leap. The strike was devastating. The blade tore through fur and muscle with ease, carving a deep gash across the creature's chest. Dark vital fluid sprayed in a wide arc as the Leakin crashed to the ground, skidding several feet before coming to a halt. Its claws raked deep grooves into the tile as it struggled to rise. Before Izuku could regain his footing, the second Leakin lunged, its jaws clamped down hard on the blade itself, the grinding of metal against enchanted steel sending painful vibrations up Izuku's arms. He gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain his grip. I guess they don't call you iron-jawed for nothing. Izuku spat, his voice strained. But hey, this sword isn't your chew toy. The Leakin growled, its immense jaw strength threatening to wrench the weapon from his hands. Izuku could feel the overwhelming power of the creature, far surpassing his own, even with his enhanced abilities. But instead of retreating, he pressed forward, using the Leakin's resistance against it. With a sudden burst of strength, Izuku twisted the blade sharply and drove it sideways. The maneuver caught the beast off guard, causing it to stumble. In that fleeting moment of vulnerability, Izuku freed the sword and swung it in a decisive horizontal arc. The blade sliced cleanly through the Lycan's midsection, severing its spine. For a brief moment, the creature remained upright, its glowing eyes wide with what almost seemed like a shock. Then its upper body slid from its lower half, both pieces collapsing to the ground with a sickening thud. Vital fluid pooled around the lifeless remains, steam rising from the still warm flesh as it spread across the cold tile. The first Lycan, though grievously wounded, had managed to rise again. It now stood frozen, staring at its fallen companion with something that resembled hesitation, or perhaps even fear. Izuku wiped a streak of vital fluid from his cheek, his breathing calm despite the strain of the battle. He turned to face the remaining Lycan, the sword resting confidently at his side. "You know," he said, a grim smile tugging at his lips, "compared to those guys, your puppies are weak." The surviving Lycan took an uncertain step back, its mechanical jaw clicking as though calculating its odds. With a final defiant growl, it turned and retreated, its claws skittering against the tile as it vanished into the shadows from which it had emerged. Izuku stood motionless, watching until the creature's glowing red eyes disappeared completely. Only then did he exhale deeply, the tension in his body dissipating. The sword in his hand felt lighter now, almost as if it approved of how he had wielded it. Then another notification popped up on the panel, its ethereal blue glow casting strange shadows across Izuku's vital fluid-spattered face. Notification: you have defeated Iron-Jawed Lycan. Your body will be healed since you're not in combat. That's convenient, Izuku murmured, tentatively putting weight on the healed limb. It felt perfectly normal, as though he'd never been injured at all. He flexed his foot experimentally, marveling at the absence of pain. With the immediate danger gone and his wounds healed, Izuku's curiosity got the better of him. He swiped his hand through the air, bringing up his status panel. The translucent blue interface materialized before him, numbers and text hovering in the space. Player status: name, Izuku Midoriya. Level 2. Class None. Title None. Fatigue 3. HP 220. MP 22. Strength 31. Dexterity 11. Perception 11. Vitality 11. Intelligence 35. Izuku's eyes narrowed as he studied the values. "My strength attribute is much higher than before," he whispered, clenching and unclenching his fist. "That explains how I sent that first Lycan flying. And my intelligence, why is that so high?" He ran his fingers through his sweat-dampened hair, trying to make sense of it all. The sword in his other hand seemed to pulse with a faint energy, as if responding to his thoughts. "Probably my natural intelligence. Shouldn't it be higher if that's what it's measuring?" Izuku mused, his frown deepening as he studied the glowing status panel. The number stared back, unchanging, mocking his doubts. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a low, guttural growl reverberating from the shadowy hallway. Izuku's head snapped up, his body instinctively tensing. The sound was unmistakable. Emerging from the darkness was the same Lycan that had fled earlier, its iron jaws gleaming under the dim light. This time, it wasn't alone. 6 more iron-jawed Lycans followed close behind, their red, coal-like eyes burning with predatory intent, their mechanical jaws clicking rhythmically as if savoring the hunt. "So, you brought reinforcements," Izuku muttered, a sardonic grin spreading across his face, vital fluid streaking his cheeks. He tightened his grip on the sword in his hand, its weight a reassuring anchor in the chaos. "Fine by me. You're all just experience points waiting to happen." The lead Lycan growled louder, almost as if it understood the insult. The pack fanned out in a semicircle, their movements eerily synchronized, displaying a level of coordination far beyond ordinary beasts. Izuku inhaled deeply, steadying his nerves, and without hesitation, he charged forward, his sword raised. The first Lycan lunged, but Izuku's blade was faster. It sang through the air, slicing cleanly through its throat. A spray of dark vital fluid splattered across the floor, painting the tiles in crimson streaks. The second Lycan barely had time to react before its front limb was severed. Izuku precisely reversed his swing, decapitating the creature in one fluid motion. "Is that all you've got?" he taunted, pivoting sharply to face the next attacker. A blur of motion from his blind spot caught him off guard. One of the Lycans lunged, its iron jaws clamping down on the hood of his jacket with a ferocious grip. The sudden force yanked him backward, the fabric tightening around his neck. Before he could react, the pack closed in, encircling him in a deadly ring of snapping jaws and razor-sharp claws. Despite the escalating danger, Izuku felt an unusual calm wash over him. His breathing steadied, and his grip on the sword remained firm. He scanned the circle of monsters, his green eyes blazing with determination. "If you want me dead," he shouted, his voice echoing through the desolate mall, "then come and get me. But don't expect me to make it easy for you." As the words left his mouth, a peculiar sensation stirred in his left eye, a cool, pulsating energy that synchronized with the rhythm of his heartbeat. The Lycans hesitated, their aggressive postures faltering as they collectively took a step back. Unbeknownst to Izuku, his left eye now glowed with an ethereal blue light, cutting through the shadows like a beacon. Seizing the moment, Izuku surged forward, breaking free of the encirclement. His movements were faster, sharper, almost superhuman. The blade in his hands became an extension of his will, slicing through fur, flesh, and bone with surgical precision. One by one, the Lycans fell, their mechanical growls silenced as they crumpled to the ground. Notification: "You have leveled up. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. I will fight with everything I have," Izuku vowed silently, his thoughts crystallizing with newfound clarity. "As long as I can still stand, I won't give up." His sword, now glowing faintly with a blue aura, cleaved through another Lycan, leaving a luminous trail in its wake. "I'll never let myself be weak again." A sharp pain shot across his back as a Lycan's claws raked against him, shredding his jacket but barely scratching his skin. Izuku spun on his heel, driving his sword through the creature's chest in one decisive thrust. "I can't afford to die here," he thought, images of his mother's worried face flashing in his mind. "If I fall, I lose everything. My family, my dreams, my future." With a powerful swing, he forced three Lycans back, their snarls turning to whimpers as they retreated momentarily. He positioned himself against a nearby pillar, using it to shield his back. Vital fluid, his own and the Lycans', dripped from his torn clothes, pooling at his feet. Yet his stance remained unwavering, his resolve unshaken. "No more running. No more excuses," Izuku declared, his voice rising with conviction. "If playing this ridiculous game is what it takes to grow stronger, then so be it." The lead Lycan, the one that had initially retreated, now barreled forward in a final, frenzied assault. Izuku locked eyes with the beast, unyielding, as the blue glow in his gaze flared brighter, searing with determination. Letting out a thunderous war cry that reverberated through the desolate, crumbling mall, he launched himself into the fray. "Let's rumba mutts." Time skip. Izuku strode purposefully toward the subway station, his senses heightened after hours of combat. The flickering emergency lights cast long shadows across the abandoned terminal, illuminating patches of cracked tile and discarded luggage. As he neared the escalator, a soft growl from the darkness made him freeze. His eyes caught movement. More wolves emerging from the shadows, their predatory gazes fixed on him, muscles coiled to strike. Their fur was matted with dried vital fluid, some bearing scars from previous encounters with other prey, or perhaps even hunters like himself. Without hesitation, Izuku shifted his stance, feet planted firmly on the ground as he gripped his sword with both hands. The wolves circled him, their movements synchronized like dancers in a lethal ballet. The lead wolf, larger than the others with a distinctive gray patch over one eye, lunged first. Izuku sidestepped with practiced ease, his blade whistling through the air as it connected with the beast's flank. The ensuing battle was swift and relentless. Izuku moved with newfound confidence, each strike deliberate and effective. The wolves attacked in waves, but they were no match for his enhanced abilities. Within minutes, the skirmish ended, leaving a grim scene of lifeless wolf carcasses strewn across the cold concrete floor of the station. Vital fluid pooled between the tiles, creating dark rivers that flowed toward the train tracks below. Breathing heavily, sweat beading on his forehead despite the underground chill, Izuku inspected his weapon. The blade that had served him well through countless encounters now bore the unmistakable scars of battle. Deep notches marked its once smooth edge, and a hairline crack ran from the hilt halfway up the blade. "The blade is chipped and cracked," he muttered, running his fingers over its worn edge. His voice echoed softly in the empty station, mingling with the distant drip of water from somewhere in the darkness. I guess every weapon, no matter how well made, has its limits. Even something as expensive as this can't withstand endless raids without taking damage. He paused, gripping the hilt tightly as a faint smile crossed his lips. The sword felt like an old friend now, an extension of his arm rather than just a tool. "Thanks, buddy. Without you, I couldn't have made it through this." His gaze lingered on the blade for a moment, taking in every dent and scratch like badges of honor, before shifting to the fallen wolves. A mix of exhaustion and determination flickered in his eyes as a blue notification appeared before him. Title: Wolf Slayer. Effect: grants a 40% boost to all stats when engaged in combat against beast-type monsters. Recognized as a mark of exceptional skill in hunting wolves. A new title, Izuku whispered, the blue light reflecting in his eyes. He flexed his fingers, wondering if he could already feel the effects of the stat boost. With a wave of his hand, he opened his inventory, scrolling through the items he'd collected during his journey through the abandoned mall and subway system. Let's see. 34 wolf fangs, still sharp and glistening with saliva. 2 rusty daggers that might come in handy for close-quarters combat. A traveler's cloak that seems to repel both water and vital fluid equally well. His eyes widened slightly as he spotted something else. And oh, a teleportation stone. That was easier to find than I thought. He summoned the teleportation stone, a smooth, polished rock that pulsed with inner light. It felt warm in his palm, vibrating gently as if eager to be used. The temptation to return to safety tugged at him, a whisper of reason in the back of his mind. Should I head back? He pondered, weighing the stone in his hand. Images of his mother flashed through his mind, her worried face, her gentle hands. The comfort of home seemed so far away now, like a half-remembered dream. He shook his head, resolution hardening his features. No, there's no telling if I'll get another opportunity to become stronger so quickly. With decisive movements, Izuku placed the teleportation stone back into his inventory. The blue light winked out as the menu closed, leaving him once again in the dim glow of the emergency lights. He rolled his shoulders, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles growing stronger, and began to move deeper into the subway tunnel. The darkness ahead seemed to shift and writhe, promising more challenges and more opportunities. As he ventured forward, the tunnel opened into what appeared to be an underground concourse, once filled with shops and commuters, but now home to various magic beasts. Izuku dispatched them methodically, his movements becoming more fluid and instinctive with each encounter. Blue notifications appeared with increasing frequency. Notification: you have leveled up. You have leveled up. Izuku paused to catch his breath, leaning against a pillar covered in faded advertisements for movies that would never premiere. He could feel the difference in his body, muscles responding faster, thoughts clearer, instincts sharper. Each time I level up, it's gradually getting easier to fight the monsters, he observed, watching as a minor wound on his forearm closed itself, leaving behind only a thin red line as evidence of the injury. My recovery time is improving too. He pushed off from the pillar and continued his exploration, delving deeper into the underground complex. The beasts he encountered grew more varied and dangerous. No longer just wolves, but creatures he had never seen before, not even in his extensive hero research. Notification: You've killed a razor-clawed Briga. The notification appeared after he defeated a hunched, humanoid creature with elongated arms ending in scythe-like claws. Its skin had been a mottled gray, eyes milky white and unseeing, yet it had tracked his movements with uncanny precision. Further along, in what must have been a maintenance area, he encountered shadowy beings that seemed to phase in and out of existence, striking from unexpected angles. Only his enhanced reflexes saved him from serious injury. Notification: You've killed a Shadow Raisin. You've killed a Shadow Raisin. These creatures left behind no corpses, merely dissipating into wisps of dark smoke that clung to his clothing before fading away. Their attacks had felt like ice against his skin, numbing wherever they touched. Izuku found a secure corner with clear sight lines in all directions and took a moment to rest. His breath formed small clouds in the increasingly cold air of the deep tunnels. He took a swig from his water bottle, savoring the cool liquid against his parched throat. "I can definitely feel myself getting stronger," he murmured, flexing his hand and watching the interplay of tendons and muscles beneath his skin. The changes were subtle but undeniable. His body was adapting to this new reality with remarkable speed. As Izuku allowed himself this brief respite, his gaze fell upon the corpse of a Leakin he had defeated earlier, its mechanical jaw now still and silent. Something clicked in his mind as he recalled the numerous notifications he had received during his battles. "I see," he said, studying the fallen creature with newfound understanding. Depending on the color of the titles determines how strong they are. White letters show that they're relatively weak. He remembered the wolves at the entrance, their names displayed in simple white text. Orange is on par with me, or slightly stronger. The Lycans had appeared in orange when he first encountered them. "And I'm guessing red means they're really strong," he concluded, a shiver of anticipation, or perhaps apprehension, running down his spine at the thought of what red-titled monsters might be waiting in the deeper darkness. Considering how these Lycans had orange names when I got started, and now they're white, I must have gotten pretty strong. But this is probably nowhere near enough if I want to beat that thing down there. Izuku stared at the staircase, descending deeper into the station, his enhanced perception detecting a menacing purple aura wafting upward like toxic smoke. A chill ran down his spine that had nothing to do with the underground dampness. Creepy. I don't know if it's because of my higher perception stat now, but I can definitely tell. That thing down there. That monster. He swallowed hard, fingers tightening around the hilt of his damaged sword. The weight of it in his hand was reassuring, despite the cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. "It's got to be incredibly strong," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the distant drip of water. "And it doesn't seem like I'll level up much more by fighting these weaker enemies." Izuku opened his status window, the blue light illuminating his face as he assessed his progress. Player status. Name: Izuku Midoriya. Level: 15. Class: None. Title: None. Fatigue: 30. HP: 1105. MP: 200. Strength: 45. Dexterity: 24. Perception: 24. Vitality: 24. Intelligence: 40. Izuku frowned, noticing his title had been omitted from the display. Was it a glitch? Or perhaps titles weren't considered part of the base status. Regardless of the reason, he knew the Wolf Slayer title had enhanced his abilities during recent battles, the effects undeniable. Running his thumb along the edge of his claymore, he felt the jagged notches carved into the once smooth blade, a testament to the countless fights he had endured since his journey began. "It's probably not worth fighting weaker monsters anymore," he murmured, testing the sword's integrity as the metal emitted a discordant hum. "This sword feels like it could break any second." Taking a deep breath, Izuku began his descent down the staircase. Each step echoed ominously in the cavernous space, the sound amplifying as though the staircase itself stretched endlessly downward. Each turn revealed yet more steps, spiraling into the unknown. Is it just me, or does this staircase go on forever? He muttered, pausing mid-step. He placed a hand against the wall to steady himself as a wave of vertigo overtook him. The concrete was unexpectedly warm, a sensation that sent a shiver down his spine. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, a familiar tiling pattern caught his attention. He squinted, recognition dawning. Wait, is this Hapjeong Station? But I was nowhere near. His voice trailed off, the implications sinking in. This dungeon was far larger than he had initially thought, or perhaps it utilized some kind of warped spatial magic to connect disparate parts of the city. Either way, the realization left him uneasy. After what felt like an eternity, Izuku finally reached the bottom of the staircase. The oppressive confines of the stairwell gave way to an expansive field blanketed in lush, ankle-high grass. The blade swayed gently despite the absence of wind. Above him, the ceiling had vanished, replaced by an open sky that glowed with an eerie blue-green hue. Yet Izuku knew better. This was no sky. They were still deep underground, and the false daylight only added to the surreal atmosphere. What the? His words were cut short by a deep rumbling. The ground quaked beneath him, vibrations growing stronger with each passing second. Alarmed, Izuku widened his stance, muscles tensing as his eyes darted across the field. His heightened senses picked up a blur of movement to his left, something massive and impossibly fast. Without warning, a blue, scaly tail as thick as a telephone pole whipped out from the tall grass. Izuku barely managed to raise his claymore in defense before the tail struck. The impact was catastrophic, far surpassing anything he had encountered in the tunnels above. His sword bore the brunt of the blow, but the metal shrieked in protest before shattering completely. The remaining force hurled him backward, slamming his body into a jagged stone outcropping. Pain exploded through his back and skull as he crumpled to the ground, his vision swimming with dark spots. What the hell was that? He gasped, vital fluid pooling in his mouth. He spat to the side, wiping his lip with the back of his hand, leaving a crimson streak across his skin. As his vision cleared, his gaze fell to the shattered remnants of his claymore scattered across the grass like shards of broken stars. The largest piece, the hilt with a jagged foot of blade still attached, lay closest to him. A sinking feeling settled in his chest. Oh no, he groaned, the word a mixture of frustration and pain. His trusted weapon, the one that had seen him through countless battles, was now reduced to debris in a single strike. He reached for the broken hilt, forcing himself to his feet despite the trembling in his legs. His HP bar had taken a significant hit from that single attack, and the realization of just how dangerous this foe was began to set in. I thought I leveled up pretty high. He muttered under his breath, clutching the hilt tightly. But as the ground rumbled once more, he realized that whatever lay before him was far beyond anything he had prepared for. Through the swaying grass, a colossal figure emerged, a serpent stretching an intimidating 30 feet in length, its body as thick as a compact car. Its shimmering blue scales gleamed like polished sapphires under the eerie light, interrupted by vivid crimson patterns that ran along its length, culminating at its wedge-shaped head. The creature's eyes radiated a sinister intelligence, their slitted pupils locking onto Izuku with unnerving precision. Hovering above the monstrous serpent in Izuku's vision was its title, Blue Venom Fanged Kasaka, King of the Swamp. Izuku's heartbeat thundered in his chest as he gripped the broken claymore tightly, shifting it into a reverse grip. Though fear gripped him, a familiar resolve ignited within, a fiery determination that had always driven him to stand tall, even in a world where he had been born quirkless. This was the essence of his heroic spirit, refusing to back down, no matter the odds. Let that thing's name still show up as orange. He muttered under his breath, noting with unease that despite his recent level gains, the creature was still considered a formidable match. The serpent reared back, its massive hood flaring wide as it released a hiss that sounded like steam escaping under pressure. Its elongated mouth revealed 4 gleaming fangs, each dripping with viscous blue venom that sizzled and burned wherever it touched the grass. Izuku steadied himself, shifting into a combat stance with the broken claymore held firmly before him like a protective ward. His sharp eyes narrowed, scanning the enemy, calculating every detail, and formulating a plan. This meticulous approach had always been his strength, even before he found himself thrust into this strange new reality. "So you're the boss around here?" he called out, his voice calm and steady despite the turmoil within. The Kasaka responded only with another menacing hiss, its coiled body taut and primed for a deadly strike. "So, you're the boss around here?" Out, his voice calm and steady despite the storm of emotions within him. His heartbeat pounded like a war drum in his chest as he gripped the broken claymore tightly, shifting it into a reverse grip for better maneuverability. Before him, the Kasaka, a towering serpent-like creature, responded with a low, menacing hiss that seemed to vibrate the very air around them. Its coiled body was tense, every muscle primed for a lethal strike. The scales covering its massive form gleamed like burnished metal in the dim light. Their gazes locked. The Kasaka's orange, slitted eyes burned with predatory intent, while Izuku's dark blue eyes reflected a mix of determination and strategic calculation. He couldn't help but think, that armor-like scale is too hard for my blade to pierce. My fists are useless against something like this. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he assessed the seemingly impenetrable defense of his opponent. Suddenly, the Kasaka lunged, its massive jaws stretching wide to reveal rows of yellowed fangs as it shot forward with terrifying speed. Izuku sidestepped just in time, feeling the rush of displaced air as the creature's head missed him by inches. The pungent scent of the beast's breath washed over him, a nauseating mix of decay and something acidic. If I can stab at the right angle, put all my weight behind the strike, and find a weak spot between those scales. Izuku's thoughts raced as he attempted a series of calculated slashes at the creature's hide. The broken claymore scraped across the serpent's body with a sound like metal against stone. Each strike, however, glanced off harmlessly, leaving not even a scratch on the creature's natural armor. The serpent reared back, its gaze fixed on him, unrelenting and calculating as if amused by his futile attempts. Izuku tightened his grip on the hilt of his weapon, the worn leather wrapping providing little comfort against his clammy palms. The Kasaka's eyes followed his every movement, its tongue flicking out to taste his fear in the air. Without warning, the snake swung its massive tail in a horizontal arc. Izuku barely managed to raise the broken sword in time, using it as a makeshift shield against the powerful blow. Metal scraped against metallic scales with a shower of sparks, the impact reverberating through Izuku's arms and into his shoulders. He dug his heels into the ground to avoid being thrown backward. "I'll die if I get a direct hit." Izuku gritted his teeth, his knuckles white against the trembling hilt of the broken sword. The weapon vibrated violently, threatening to shatter completely, fine cracks spidering across its battered blade. He felt the force of the tail slam into him, driving him back several feet, boots carving deep tracks into the dirt as he struggled to stay upright. Before he could steady himself, the Kasaka moved fast, too fast for something its size. It slithered in a wide arc, coiling around him like a constricting cage, its massive body tightening the circle with every second. Izuku turned sharply, eyes darting to follow the serpent's movements, but it was too smart. Its tail lashed out in calculated strikes, cutting off his options and boxing him in. The ground beneath him felt unstable, his footing precarious. He was trapped, and he knew it. The Kasaka wasn't just attacking, it was hunting. Izuku muttered under his breath, his voice low and bitter. "Eff it." His breathing quickened as his mind raced, searching for any opening, any chance to break free. The tail came at him again, whipping from every direction, above, behind, the sides. He had no time to think, only react. Each strike forced him into a relentless rhythm of dodging and blocking, the shattered sword barely holding up under the onslaught. He dropped to his knees, dirt grinding into his palms as he grabbed the broken blade tighter. The snake reared back, readying for another strike. Izuku pushed himself up, one knee planted firmly against the ground, his breath ragged but determined. "I thought I'd gotten stronger," he growled, the words harsh and clipped, his voice thick with frustration. "But I guess I wasn't strong enough. Not strong enough to escape my miserable past." He shoved the broken sword forward, using it as a barrier against the tail's force. The impact rattled his bones, but he held on. He lunged at the serpent, the jagged edge of the blade catching faint light as it swung through the air. His grip tightened until the leather wrapping bit into his skin, vital fluid seeping between his fingers. The pain didn't register. All that mattered was surviving. "Yeah, I'm weak," he spat, his voice raw, his breathing uneven. "That's why they gave me that name. And I hate it. I hate being a weak hunter. I hate being pathetic." His words came out sharp, edged with anger and shame. He clenched the sword harder, the vibrations in the metal matching the tremor in his chest. The Kasaka watched him, its unblinking eyes gleaming with predatory focus. It tasted his fear, his desperation, its forked tongue flicking out in deliberate, mocking movements. The snake coiled tighter, its muscles rippling beneath metallic scales. The air grew heavier, the sound of its body shifting filling the chamber like a sinister whisper. Izuku didn't flinch. He couldn't. He wouldn't. The cold steel in his hand felt alive, a reminder that even broken things could still fight. And right now, he had no choice but to fight. "F it," Izuku muttered, his eyes scanning the room like a radar, searching for an opening. The Kasaka's tail whipped through the air, coming at him from all sides. Fast, unpredictable. He moved on instinct, dodging, blocking, barely keeping himself upright. The rhythm of the attacks left no room for a counter. No time to think. He dropped low, his hands brushing the dirt, grabbing the broken sword just as the snake coiled for another strike. "I thought I'd gotten stronger," he said under his breath, his voice tight, edged with frustration. "But not strong enough. Not enough to escape the weakling I used to be." He raised the shattered blade, bracing against the next attack. The tail slammed into him, driving him to one knee. His muscles burned, and his grip tightened on the jagged weapon. He pushed forward, lunging at the serpent with a ferocity born of desperation. The blade trembled in his hand, its chipped edge catching faint glimmers of light in the dim chamber. The cold metal vibrated with every ragged breath he took, almost as if it were alive, feeding off his will to survive. "Yeah, I'm weak," he growled, his voice low and hard, each word dragged out like a confession. "That's why that nickname. That's why I hate it. And maybe they're right. Maybe I am pathetic." His grip tightened until the leather wrapping bit into his palm, the jagged edge cutting into his skin. Vital fluid ran down his fingers, but he didn't care. Pain was just a distraction. The sword, once a proud claymore, was now a battered piece of scrap metal. Just like his confidence. Just like his pride. The Kasaka watched him, its unblinking eyes locked on his every move. Its tongue flicked out, tasting the fear in the air. It was deliberate, taunting. The coils of its massive body twisted tighter, the metallic scales rippling like liquid steel. Another strike was coming. Izuku knew it. The sound of its scales sliding together filled the space, a slow, rhythmic whisper that set his nerves on edge. "Power!" he murmured, his voice barely audible. He dodged the next strike, the serpent's tail cutting through the air like a whip. His boots scraped against the ground, carving grooves into the dirt as he fought to stay upright. Only power can make them kneel. Only power makes them respect you. He sucked in a sharp breath, his body screaming for rest, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. He drove the jagged blade toward a loose scale, aiming for a weakness. The blade struck, sparks flying, but it didn't penetrate. The impact jolted his arm, numbing his fingers. "Empty promises won't save me," he said, his voice sharper now, defiant. Sweat ran down his face, stinging his eyes, mixing with the vital fluid from shallow cuts. He blinked furiously, trying to clear his vision. No matter how clever they are, no matter what tricks they play, raw strength wins every time. The serpent hissed, a sharp, angry sound, and lashed out again, faster this time. The air compressed around the attack, the sheer velocity displacing the atmosphere. Izuku ducked, the rush of air brushing past him, the oppressive heat of the snake's body grazing his skin. He stumbled back, his boots skidding on loose pebbles. The walls of the chamber loomed closer, boxing him in and cutting off his escape. Even the bravest crumble when faced with real power. He gasped, his voice strained but steady. He widened the gap between them, his movements deliberate, his focus narrowing to the serpent's every twitch. They mock you because you're weak, because kindness doesn't matter. Wisdom doesn't matter. They only care about strength. The Kasaka moved with precision, its aggression sharpening. It circled him now, its coils forming a living cage, tightening with every second. It was fast, too fast for something so massive. Izuku's eyes darted, cataloging every detail, every shift in the serpent's posture. He couldn't afford to miss anything. His pupils contracted, his focus absolute. In the presence of real power, he said, his voice rising, laced with bitterness. Even your allies abandon you. Even the ones you trusted. Memories hit him hard, faces turning cold, betrayal cutting deeper than any blade. The sting of rejection fueled his anger and his determination. Power rules everything, he growled, the words sharp and clipped like the crack of a whip. His body drove forward, muscles burning but precise, each step calculated, unrelenting. Exhaustion gnawed at him, but he ignored it. Stronger. I have to be stronger. The tail struck again, this time too fast to dodge, a blur of scaled muscle and deadly force. It connected with Izuku's midsection with bone-jarring force, the impact expelling all air from his lungs in a painful whoosh. His body lifted off the ground, suspended for a moment before being sent flying backward. The broken sword clattered from his grasp, spinning across the dirt floor with a metallic screech as his body smacked into the wall with a sickening thud. Pain exploded across his back like fireworks, each vertebra screaming in protest, and his vision swam with dark spots that threatened to consume his consciousness. The Kasaka reared back, its massive head rising toward the ceiling, orange eyes gleaming with what almost looked like satisfaction at its prey's broken state. Venom dripped from its fangs, sizzling where it hit the ground. Izuku gasped, tasting copper in his mouth as he slid down to the ground, legs trembling beneath him like reeds in a storm. His fingers scrabbled in the dirt, desperately searching for the hilt of his fallen weapon, leaving crimson smears where his torn skin made contact with the earth. I must. Izuku groaned, his arms trembling as he struggled to lift himself from the ground. His breaths were shallow and uneven, each one a testament to the toll his body had endured. Yet, within his eyes burned an unrelenting fire, a fierce determination that refused to be extinguished. Vital fluid trickled from the corner of his mouth, its metallic tang sharp on his tongue, fueling his resolve rather than sapping his strength. As he forced his body upward, an ancient power stirred deep within him, roused from its long dormancy. His hair began to rise, defying gravity as though caught in an invisible current of energy. Suddenly, a vivid, pulsating aura of deep violet erupted around him, spiraling like a sentient flame, wild, volatile, and brimming with raw intensity. The atmosphere grew dense, vibrating with an otherworldly force that seemed to press against every surface, suffusing the air with a palpable sense of power. His pupils ignited with a searing blue luminescence, the glow intensifying in rhythm with his heartbeat. The light carved sharp shadows across his face, accentuating the fierce resolve etched into his expression. I must grow stronger, he murmured, his voice unwavering, steady as steel despite the strain weighing upon him. Each syllable rang with unshakable conviction, a declaration of will that reverberated through the charged air. The aura around him surged in response, violet flames flickering and coiling across his skin, a vivid manifestation of his unyielding spirit and indomitable will. The Kasaka felt it first, a shift in the air, subtle but undeniable, like the faint rumble of an approaching storm. Its coils tightened instinctively, the metallic sheen of its scales catching the flicker of dim light in the chamber. It paused just for a second, orange eyes narrowing into slits. Calculating, deciding. The air thickened around it, charged with raw energy, heavy enough to taste. Then the moment snapped. The serpent moved, fast and lethal, jaws stretching wide, teeth sharp as razors ready to rip through anything in its path. Izuku didn't flinch. He was already moving, muscles tight and focused, instincts honed. A quick sidestep, efficient clean, and the Kasaka's head missed it by inches. The jaws clamped shut on nothing, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the cavernous space. Izuku didn't waste time. His broken claymore caught the light, jagged and brutal, as he drove it forward with precision. No hesitation. The blade punched through the gap between two scales, biting deep into the creature's flesh. The sound was ugly, wet, and raw, but Izuku didn't care. He wasn't here for finesse. He was here to survive. Not yet. Not yet. Izuku's voice cut through the air like a blade, sharp and unwavering. The ancient stone walls seemed to absorb the sound, amplifying it, turning his words into a battle hymn. His stance was solid, his presence unyielding, like a man who had faced fear itself and walked away stronger. Compared to the statue god, compared to the terror I felt that day. You don't scare me. Not even close. His words weren't just defiance. They were a challenge to the serpent, to the room, to the forces that had dragged him into this fight. The Kasaka shuddered, its enormous coils twisting violently, thrashing against the embedded blade like a wounded beast. Izuku didn't flinch. He held on, his grip locked tight, his focus razor-sharp. The sword wasn't just a weapon now. It was his foothold, his anchor in the chaos. He pushed off, muscles straining, boots slamming into the serpent's armored body with a force that could have shattered steel. Each strike was deliberate, every movement calculated, as though he was climbing a ladder made of shifting, deadly metal. The serpent sensed him and felt the threat. Its head snapped around, jaws opening wide, fangs glinting like scythes under dim light. It moved fast, too fast for most. But Izuku wasn't the most. He saw it coming and read the attack like a book he'd memorized. The timing was everything. He waited, held his breath, and then launched himself upward, his body coiling like a spring, his boots leaving the serpent's armor behind. For a moment, he was airborne, suspended above the chaos, dust swirling around him like a storm frozen in time. He let go of the claymore, dropped it without hesitation, as if it were nothing more than dead weight. The serpent lunged, its jaws opening wider, ready to swallow him whole. But Izuku had already planned this. He wasn't improvising. This was precision. He twisted mid-air, his body moving with purpose, his trajectory flawless. The abandoned blade deflected the Fong just enough, buying him the split second he needed. He didn't land in the serpent's mouth. He landed on its neck. Boots hit hard, slamming down with enough force to send shockwaves through the beast's massive frame. Izuku didn't stop. His hands glowed with a strange, pulsing energy, purple, vibrant, alive. He gripped the serpent's scales, fingers digging in with a strength that defied reason. The armor, tough as it was, started to give. Cracks formed, spreading outward like fractures in ice. The sound was sharp and eerie, like bones breaking under pressure. I poured everything into my strength stats, he thought, a grim smile pulling at his bruised lips. The serpent's arrogance faded, its orange eyes wide with disbelief. The cracks grew, splintering further, the once impenetrable armor now vulnerable under his relentless grip. Izuku didn't let up. He wasn't just fighting to survive, he was fighting to win. And the serpent, for all its size and power, was starting to break. With the power I have, Izuku chanted, his voice surprisingly calm despite the chaos that raged around him. His fingers dug deeper into the weakening scales of the colossal serpent, the aura around his hands intensifying until it shimmered like molten amethyst, pulsating with raw energy. Each pulse sent ripples through the air, distorting the space around him as though reality itself was bending under the weight of his determination. The serpent, a creature of ancient malice and unrelenting fury, coiled and thrashed in a desperate attempt to dislodge its attacker. Its massive body slammed Izuku into wall after wall, the impacts reverberating like thunderclaps through the chamber. Each collision sent shockwaves of pain through Izuku's body, his ribs groaning under the strain. Dust and debris filled the air in choking clouds as the ancient stonework crumbled, the once majestic architecture reduced to ruin. The serpent roared a guttural, ear-splitting sound that seemed to shake the very foundation of the earth, before slamming upward with terrifying force. Izuku's back met the cold, unforgiving ceiling, the impact driving the air from his lungs before he was brought crashing down onto a massive support beam. The wood splintered beneath him with a sickening crack, sending shards flying in all directions. A jagged chunk of falling debris struck Izuku's temple, tearing open a deep gash that immediately flooded his face with warm, sticky. The crimson liquid traced erratic paths down his cheeks, mingling with the sweat and grime that already clung to his skin. His vision blurred, the edges of his sight darkening as consciousness wavered. For a fleeting moment, his grip faltered, his fingers loosening ever so slightly from the serpent's scales. The Kasaka, sensing the shift, hissed triumphantly, its orange eyes gleaming with predatory intent. It coiled tighter, preparing for a final, decisive strike. But something deep within Izuku, something primal, unyielding, and utterly indomitable, refused to let go. A fire ignited in his core, hotter and brighter than ever before, driving him forward. He snapped his head up, vital fluid painting crimson streaks down his face in sharp contrast to the eerie blue light blazing in his eyes. The glow was unnatural, otherworldly, and filled with a ferocity that made even the ancient serpent hesitate. His jaw clenched, his teeth grinding audibly as he forced his trembling fingers to tighten their grip. Izuku stood firm, his breath steady despite the chaos around him. "With the power I have," he muttered, low and sharp like a blade being drawn. His hands, slick with vital fluid and trembling from the effort, pressed harder against the serpent's cracked scales. The ichor oozed out, thick and foul, stinking of rotten death. The Kasaka's armor, legendary, impenetrable, unbeaten for centuries, was failing. A fracture appeared, jagged and cruel, spreading under his relentless grip. Then it broke. The sound was sharp and clean, like glass shattering in a silent room. Dark vital fluid sprayed out, hot and sticky, splattering Izuku's face and chest. The serpent screamed, a guttural, primal sound. Core. Its massive body convulsed, thrashing wildly, each movement sending chunks of debris crashing from the ceiling. Dust and stone rained down, the room groaning under the weight of the fight. But Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He didn't stop. "I know I can kill you here and now." His voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding, louder than the serpent's cries or the crumbling walls. The aura around him pulsed, beating in time with his heart, a rhythm of raw, unfiltered power. His muscles screamed, his body pushed to the edge, but his will held firm. His fingers dug deeper, tearing through flesh and sinew, searching for something solid, something vital. And then he found it. Bone, or maybe nerve. Didn't matter. He had it. The Kasaka thrashed harder, frantic now, desperate. Its golden eyes weren't cold anymore. They flickered. Fear. Izuku saw it, felt it, and he burned brighter. His eyes blazed, blue light pouring out, cutting through the darkness like a spotlight. He didn't hesitate, didn't falter. He tightened his grip, every ounce of strength surging through him. "Die," he growled low at first, then louder. "Dai." The roar echoed, raw and unyielding, bouncing off the ancient walls. His muscles screamed, veins bulging, and his body pushed past its breaking point. And then he pulled. Hard. Flesh tore. Bones snapped. The sound was sickening, a crunch that lingered in the air like a bad memory. The Kasaka's massive body convulsed violently, its serpentine form writhing in agony as essential connections were severed. Its once graceful movements turned jerky and chaotic, the sheer force of its death throes shaking the ground beneath them. Cracks splintered across the stone floor as the beast's tail lashed out one final time, smashing into a nearby pillar and sending debris cascading down like a crumbling monument. Notification: you have defeated the king of the swamp. Blue Venom, Fanged Kasaka. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. The serpent's head dropped forward, heavy and final. Its orange eyes, once blazing like twin infernos, flickered out, leaving only darkness behind. The thing was dead. No question about it. Moments ago, it had been all power and menace, a predator in motion, but now it was just a carcass. Its immense body lay sprawled awkwardly on the chamber floor, coils tangled, vital fluid seeping from the gash in its neck. It was thick, almost black, spreading slowly beneath the broken shards of its scales. Izuku slid down the creature's side, his legs giving out halfway. He hit the corpse hard, knees buckling, lungs dragging in the air like a man who'd been underwater too long. His skin was slick with sweat, streaked with vital fluid, his and the serpent's. It dripped off him, mixing with the dark pool below. His muscles twitched involuntarily, the last tremors of adrenaline fading, leaving him spent. He felt like a worn-out engine, running on fumes and nothing else. The chamber was a wreck. Walls cracked, pillars smashed, debris everywhere. The place had seen better days, no doubt about it. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the ceiling, cutting through the haze of dust like searchlights. The whole scene had an odd stillness to it, like the aftermath of a storm. Quiet. Too quiet. Izuku sat there, catching his breath. Then something shifted inside him. Not physically, but mentally. A strange kind of satisfaction bubbled up, sharp and unexpected. He grinned, slow at first, then wider. The grin turned into a laugh, low, rough, and real. It echoed off the broken walls, filling the space, even if it's just a bit. He said to no one in particular, his voice steady, stronger than it had been in days. The weakest of mankind has gotten stronger. The words hung there, solid and certain. He reached out, tracing the serpent's scales with his fingers. They were cool now, the heat of life gone. His touch was deliberate, almost respectful. The thing had been a hell of a fighter. It deserved that much. Notifications blinked in his peripheral vision. 3 levels gained. Big deal. Numbers didn't matter. What mattered was what he'd just done. He'd faced something impossible and walked away. That was the real win. So, this was the end of part 2 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.